Chapter 1, The Scheme Against the Crown Prince. Olivia Carter, you truly are despicable, daring to seduce His Highness the Crown Prince. Do you think that just because you have the face of a temptress, you can rule over everyone? You're nothing but a fool. At a lonely pavilion by the moon reflection lake in the royal gardens, Evelyn Carter stalked towards Olivia Carter, her eyes burning with jealousy, a raging inferno of hatred threatening to consume all. To Evelyn Carter, Olivia Carter's breathtaking beauty was a dagger forged in the fires of envy, plunged deep into her heart. The image of the Crown Prince's tender affection towards Olivia only intensified her loathing for that lovely face. No, I didn't, second sister. Olivia Carter, witnessing Evelyn Carter's increasingly menacing approach, was baffled by her supposed transgression. Too afraid to flee, she retreated step by step, until she was backed against the edge of the pavilion. How dare you, a mere fool, dream of someone as noble as His Highness the Crown Prince? With those words, Evelyn Carter glanced at the lake behind Olivia Carter, her heart full of malice. Suddenly, she stepped forward and gave Olivia Carter a strong push, sending her unguarded into the moon reflection lake. Second sister, please, no. Cough, cough. I didn't. It was him who said he'd treat me well, that he wanted to remove my clothes. Olivia Carter desperately clung to the edge of the pavilion, terrified, pleading with Evelyn Carter. His Highness the Crown Prince said he'd be good to you. Evelyn Carter stood at the pavilion's edge, staring down at Olivia Carter in the water. She sneered, someone like you? Don't make me laugh. Just die. In Evelyn Carter's mind, there was only jealousy and rage. She stomped harshly on Olivia Carter's hand, which was gripping the edge of the pavilion. Hearing Olivia's cries of pain, a wave of malicious pleasure surged through her. No, it hurts. Sister, please, no. Olivia doesn't want to die. Olivia Carter screamed and pleaded, struggling desperately. But Evelyn Carter remained cold and merciless, kicking Olivia's head, sending her plunging beneath the surface. Olivia's desperate grip loosened. She sank slowly before Evelyn's eyes, deeper and deeper, until the disturbed water stilled. Ha ha ha. Evelyn Carter laughed triumphantly as she looked at the rippling lake. Olivia Carter, you deserve this. The Crown Prince is mine. How dare you, a stupid fool, have such a beautiful face? Her laughter abruptly stopped. She stared in shock as ripples appeared where Olivia had sunk, and Olivia Carter resurfaced. Not dead yet? Evelyn Carter exclaimed, incredulous. Seeing Olivia about to emerge, her cruel instincts surged. She shoved Olivia's head back under the water with all her might, determined to drown her. Don't blame me. If I don't do this to you, I'll do it to myself. Just as Olivia Carter was about to break the surface, someone suddenly pushed her head down again, forcing her deeper underwater. Furious, Olivia reached out and grabbed the hands pressing on her head, yanking Evelyn Carter into the water with all her might. Evelyn Carter, caught off guard, fell into the water and screamed, "You wretch, how dare you drag me down? Help, help!" Olivia Carter, shaking off her dizziness, surfaced and froze in shock. She stared at the artificial rocks by the lakeside and Evelyn Carter, who was flailing and screaming for help. Just moments ago, she had been chasing a criminal in a police car on a bridge. The car had flipped and plunged into a river after its tire was shot. She remembered struggling to escape the vehicle and swim to the surface, only to lose consciousness due to lack of oxygen. When she woke, she was nearly drowned by this crazed woman in ancient clothing. Could it be that oxygen deprivation caused her to hallucinate? Why is this happening? How did the two young ladies of the Chancellor's residence fall into the water? The Empress, drawn by Evelyn Carter's piercing cries, frowned as she looked at Olivia Carter and Evelyn Carter struggling in the water. Hurry and pull them out. It was April, the height of summer, peonies in full bloom. The Empress, in high spirits, had organized a peony banquet in the Imperial garden, inviting royal relatives and their families to admire the flowers. Her true aim was to select suitable consorts for the crown prince, solidifying his position. This incident had thrown everything into chaos, infuriating her. "Evelyn, are you all right?" Miranda Nightshade, the wife of Chancellor Carter, immediately rushed to her drenched daughter as she was pulled out of the water. With evident distress, she wrapped a prepared cloak around Evelyn Carter. "How did you fall into the lake?" "Mother, it was Olivia Carter. She dragged me in." Evelyn Carter, clinging to Miranda Nightshade, feigned helplessness and pointed accusingly at Olivia Carter, her voice thick with false grievance. Olivia, being a fool, wouldn't be able to defend herself. Miranda Nightshade's gaze immediately snapped to Olivia Carter, who stood soaking wet and alone, ignored by everyone. With fury in her voice, she demanded, "Olivia Carter, did you pull your sister into the lake?" The onlookers stared at Olivia Carter with disdain. Who in the capital of Dongtang Kingdom didn't know the Chancellor's third daughter? Beautiful enough to topple nations, but a fool. It was easy to believe she'd pulled her sister into the lake. Standing by the lakeside, Olivia Carter panted slightly, a cold smile forming in her heart. "If your daughter hadn't tried to drown me, would I have pulled her into the lake?" From the memories of this body, she clearly recalled how Miranda Nightshade and her daughter had relentlessly bullied the original owner and how Evelyn Carter had just pushed her into the lake. She had seen it all. "No, it wasn't me," Olivia Carter replied, her voice trembling slightly. "The Crown Prince said he liked Olivia, but Sister said Olivia was a fool and unworthy of the Crown Prince's affection. She said she wanted to drown Olivia and pushed Olivia into the water. Olivia got scared and grabbed Sister's hand, and then Sister fell into the water with Olivia." Feigning her usual naive and clueless demeanor, Olivia Carter shivered from the cold and innocently asked, "Mother, what does drowned mean?" As soon as she spoke, the crowd collectively gasped. A fool couldn't possibly know how to lie. Yet Evelyn Carter, out of jealousy over the Crown Prince's favor, had acted so viciously. And the Crown Prince, could he truly have feelings for someone who was nothing more than a beautiful but unintelligent fool? Everyone couldn't help but look towards the Empress, whose face had turned pale. It was well known that Crown Prince Frederick Lancaster had been raised meticulously under her guidance. To ensure Frederick Lancaster could firmly secure his position as the Crown Prince, she had poured countless efforts into his upbringing. Anyone who could enter the Crown Prince's residence had to come from a powerful family, be intelligent and capable. How could someone foolish, hailing from a lesser branch of the Prime Minister's household, possibly enter the Crown Prince's residence? If the court officials supporting the Crown Prince learned of this, wouldn't they think the Crown Prince was blinded by beauty and neglecting his great responsibilities? Crown Prince, is this true? Mother Empress, absolutely not. This child was merely enjoying the scenery by the lake when the third Lady Carter chased after a butterfly and unexpectedly fell into my arms, just as the second Lady Carter happened to witness it. I fear there has been a misunderstanding. Frederick Lancaster bowed his head in reply, not even sparing Olivia Carter a glance. His expression was stern, entirely different from the carefree and indulgent demeanor he had displayed while entangled with Olivia Carter amidst the flowers earlier. Previously, Frederick Lancaster had clearly been infatuated with Olivia Carter, even promising to marry her into the Eastern Palace. However, once Evelyn Carter caught them together and, in a fit of jealousy, attempted to drown Olivia Carter, Frederick now disassociated himself from it all, acting as though he had no involvement. Olivia Carter let out a cold laugh inwardly. Before she could retort, Evelyn Carter hastily pointed at her and said, "What His Highness said is true, Your Majesty." I reprimanded Olivia Carter for her lack of decency, but not only did she refuse to listen, she even dragged me into the lake. In an instant, the crowd's gaze towards Olivia Carter became tinged with doubt. After all, one person's word might be questionable, but both Frederick Lancaster and Evelyn Carter accusing Olivia of seducing the Crown Prince made her claims seem less credible. However, while it wasn't surprising for a foolish girl to pull someone into the lake, how could she possibly know how to seduce a man? Your Highness, didn't you say Olivia was the one you liked the most? You don't keep your word. Olivia Carter immediately put on a pitiful expression, her eyes brimming with tears as she stammered at Frederick Lancaster. You even held Olivia, reciting poetry to Olivia, saying things like, "Fair maiden, upon seeing you, I cannot forget, not seeing you for a day drives me mad with longing." And something about, in the heavens, may we be like two wings of a bird, on the earth, may we grow as intertwined branches. The Empress's face grew darker and darker as she listened, while Frederick Lancaster wished he could silence Olivia Carter on the spot. The guests exchanged glances with one another. Who didn't know that Olivia Carter was merely a beauty without substance? How could she possibly understand such poetic verses? For her to recite them so vividly, it must certainly be true. Ah, and there's more, Olivia Carter, still unsatisfied, pulled out a silk handkerchief from her sleeve and held it up for everyone to see. The crowd was stunned as they noticed two small embroidered characters in the corner of the handkerchief, Fred, which was the courtesy name of Frederick Lancaster, personally bestowed upon him by the esteemed scholar Master Hua on the day of his coming-of-age ceremony. You even gave me this handkerchief, saying it was a token of your affection." Silence. The Empress angrily interrupted Olivia Carter. Now that even a token of affection had surfaced, allowing Olivia Carter to continue would leave Frederick Lancaster with no choice but to marry her, lest he be condemned by society for lacking virtue. However, the Empress was determined not to let Olivia Carter step foot in the Eastern Palace. If it were Evelyn Carter that Frederick was interested in, it would have been more tolerable, but Olivia Carter? The mere thought left the Empress seething with frustration. Though Olivia Carter was the second daughter, she was also a fool by nature. Yet, as the Prime Minister's daughter, if she entered the Eastern Palace, the position of secondary consort would undoubtedly be hers. The Eastern Palace's hierarchy allowed for one principal consort and two secondary consorts, and there was no way the Empress would allow someone as inherently foolish as Olivia Carter to take one of those spots. Those positions were meant to solidify alliances with more influential officials. Before the Empress could figure out how to deal with Olivia Carter, she heard the third prince, Richard Lancaster, who had been silently standing nearby. He sighed as he looked at Olivia Carter, who was soaked to the bone and trembling. Taking the cloak just brought over by a palace maid, he limped forward and gently draped it over Olivia Carter's shoulders. It was early April, the beginning of summer, yet the lake water was still chilly. Olivia Carter, drenched from head to toe and kneeling on the cold ground for so long, began to feel the chill seeping into her. The moment the cloak covered her, she felt a wave of warmth, her heart touched by Richard Lancaster's gesture. She offered him a faint smile of gratitude. Richard Lancaster clasped his hands and bowed slightly to the Empress, saying, "Your Majesty, both young ladies of the Carter family fell into the water and are thoroughly soaked. The early summer breeze is still cold, perhaps it would be better for them to change their clothes first before we investigate this matter further. What do you think?" Chapter 2, Turning Truth Upside Down. Investigate further. If this continued, it would only be a matter of time before the Crown Prince was forced to marry Olivia Carter, this simple-minded girl. The Empress glared coldly at Richard Lancaster, her anger simmering but unspoken. She glanced at him several times, then turned her gaze to Olivia Carter, still kneeling on the ground. After repeating this process a few times, a sudden thought flashed through her mind. "Richard, I recall that this silk handkerchief was given to you when you and the Crown Prince visited my palace for tea recently. The tea spilled on you, and the Crown Prince handed you the handkerchief to clean yourself. How is it that this handkerchief has ended up in the hands of the third Miss Carter?" The Empress smiled, though her eyes betrayed no trace of warmth. "Could it be that you have long admired the third Miss Carter and gave her the handkerchief yourself, only for her to misunderstand it as a gift from the crown prince? This display of turning black into white astounded everyone present. Naturally, they didn't believe the Empress's words, feeling a pang of pity for Richard Lancaster, believing the third prince had been unjustly wronged. He shouldn't have played the hero for Olivia Carter. Sure enough, the Empress continued, since the two of you are so deeply in love, I shall issue an imperial decree for your marriage. I will order the imperial astronomer to choose an auspicious date for your wedding. What do you think? Although the Empress spoke as if she were consulting them, her tone left no room for negotiation. Richard Lancaster could only kneel and say, "Your son obeys the decree." I also obey the decree. Olivia Carter could only feign innocence, bowing her head alongside Richard Lancaster to accept the order. Richard Lancaster, the third prince of Dongxing Kingdom, suffered a tragic accident at 10. While on an autumn hunt with the king, a ferocious tiger startled his horse, throwing him to the ground. The accident crippled his leg and partially deafened his right ear. He often struggled to hear clearly from his right side. A once brilliant, courageous youth was now a shadow of his former self, lackluster in both scholarship and martial arts, the weakest prince. Watching Richard Lancaster accept the decree, a cold smile played on the Empress's lips. A fool and a cripple, a match made in heaven, she thought, her sharp gaze shifting to Olivia Carter. This foolish girl dreams of the Crown Prince's residence. I'll shatter that delusion today. Evelyn Carter leaned against Miranda Nightshade, shivering from the cold, yet immensely satisfied. Seeing Olivia Carter ordered to marry the crippled third prince, severing any connection with the Crown Prince, she felt the urge to prostrate herself before the Empress in gratitude. As she reveled in her thoughts, Evelyn Carter's gaze accidentally met Olivia Carter's half-smiling eyes. Olivia Carter quietly curled her lips into a faint smirk and mouthed something silently. Evelyn understood her lip movements. She was saying, "Sister, don't celebrate too soon." A chill ran through Evelyn Carter's heart. She couldn't shake the feeling that her once inherently foolish younger sister now seemed somehow different. The peony banquet, initially organized to select a consort for Frederick Lancaster, unexpectedly ended with no bride chosen for the Crown Prince. Instead, it resulted in an uncertain union between Richard Lancaster and Olivia Carter, leaving the entire capital of Dongxing Kingdom abuzz with gossip. Olivia Carter sat in the drawing room of her courtyard, listening to the chatter of young maids cleaning the yard outside. They were animatedly discussing the recent events, but Olivia remained expressionless, as still as a mountain, sipping her tea. In contrast, her close maid, Elara Moonstone, couldn't hold back any longer. She stormed into the courtyard, ready to scold the gossiping maids. "Stop right there." Olivia Carter's sharp voice stopped her. "What are you doing? They're going too far. My lady, you're marrying the third prince, a cripple, and yet they dare to say you've struck it rich." Elara Moonstone fumed. Then, as if struck by lightning, she suddenly turned to stare at Olivia Carter with wide eyes. My lady, you're not foolish anymore." Olivia Carter's clear, lucid eyes gazed at her, a clarity she had never shown before. "Do I look like a fool to you?" "That's amazing, my lady. Your foolishness has vanished." Elara Moonstone exclaimed joyfully, nearly jumping before her expression turned somber. "But my lady, you're marrying the crippled third prince." To Elara Moonstone, her third lady was beautiful and kind, though a little foolish. Now, with her foolishness gone, she seemed flawless. Yet, the betrothal to the crippled and deaf third prince felt cruel. How could she not be indignant? "The third prince might not be as bad as you think," Olivia Carter murmured, recalling the hands that had draped a cloak over her shoulders in the Imperial garden. Richard Lancaster had revealed a delicate and thoughtful nature. Crippled and deaf, how could he possibly be good? Elara Moonstone retorted angrily. "You don't understand. Choosing a man isn't about appearances," Olivia Carter replied with a faint smile. Having transmigrated to this world of arranged marriages, she preferred choosing Richard Lancaster herself rather than leaving her fate to her stepmother, who wished her ill. Moreover, Richard Lancaster's disabilities suited her plans perfectly. If he dared to upset her, as a former Special Forces soldier from the 21st century, she wouldn't hesitate to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. Not to mention, his royal status could be advantageous to her. Rising to her feet, she declared, "Come, let's visit the madam's courtyard. That wretched Olivia Carter deserves it." She tried to seduce the crown prince, and look what happened, she angered the empress and ended up being betrothed to the crippled third prince. Ha ha ha. Mother, isn't that just hilarious? As Olivia Carter stepped into Miranda Nightshade's courtyard, she overheard Evelyn Carter's arrogant, gloating laughter coming from the main hall. Beside her, Elara Moonstone's face flushed with anger. Miranda Nightshade's voice followed, filled with mockery. She's a fool. Getting married to a crippled prince as his main wife is a blessing for her. After all, he's still a prince. Otherwise, she'd only be fit to be a concubine. I am, after all, a legitimate princess consort to a prince. Mother and second sister, don't you think your words undermine the dignity of the royal family? Olivia Carter entered the main hall, her smile gentle yet piercing. You're talking nonsense. When did I ever disrespect the royal family? Miranda Nightshade's face darkened. Such accusations were serious, disrespecting the royal family was punishable by death. She wouldn't let Olivia Carter pin such a charge on her. But I clearly heard mother and second sister calling the third prince a cripple and gossiping about the emperor's son behind his back. I wonder what His Majesty would think if he heard about this. Perhaps we should ask father for his opinion. As Olivia Carter's words struck home, Miranda Nightshade and Evelyn Carter blanched. Just yesterday, at the peony banquet, which Chancellor Carter had missed due to prior engagements but had received a full account of, the incident of his daughter's tumble into Moonlit Lake had been duly noted. The Empress's blatant favoritism towards the Crown Prince, evident in pairing Olivia Carter with Richard Lancaster, was clear to all. Evelyn Carter's jealous outburst and subsequent attempt to harm her younger sister had become the court's latest scandal, spreading like wildfire alongside the ridicule of Olivia Carter's engagement to Richard Lancaster. This had earned both Miranda Nightshade and Evelyn Carter a harsh reprimand from Chancellor Carter. Still smarting from the scolding, they now faced Olivia Carter's pointed barb, twisting the knife deeper into their fresh wounds. You little harlot, don't get above yourself just because you're betrothed to the third prince. Evelyn Carter snarled, the words tumbling out, so what if you tell father? Do you think he values a good-for-nothing like you over us? Good-for-nothing? Even if I were, at least the crown prince noticed me. Second sister yearns to be his concubine, yet he wouldn't give her a second look, Olivia Carter countered with a serene smile. You haven't even the fortune to be a concubine. Doesn't that make you an even bigger failure than me? Evelyn Carter's face turned red with anger, ready to hurl more insults, but Miranda Nightshade stopped her. Miranda looked at Olivia Carter suspiciously and asked, You're not stupid anymore. In the past, Olivia Carter wouldn't have understood Evelyn's mocking words, let alone retorted so sharply. Mother, have you never heard of, great wisdom often appears foolish? Olivia Carter stood there calmly, exuding confidence. Oh, so you've been playing the fool all along, deceiving us. Evelyn Carter gaped at Olivia before erupting into laughter. Even if you're clever now, what does it matter? You're still marrying the third prince. The crown prince's residence. You can forget about setting foot there, ever. Second sister, you may prize the crown prince, but he's nothing to me, Olivia Carter scoffed, her gaze flicking to Miranda Nightshade. Mother, I came here today to ask, since I'm marrying the third prince, what dowry do you intend to provide? Miranda Nightshade's expression froze. She understood the implication. Olivia's birth mother, Amelia Roberts, had hailed from a wealthy Jiangnan family, bringing a considerable dowry upon marrying into the Carter household. Before her death, Amelia had stipulated in her will that her entire dowry be passed down to Olivia as her marital inheritance. This dowry, which Miranda had managed all these years, generated significant annual profits from shops and farmland, fueling her growing greed. Now, the thought of returning all that wealth was unbearable to her. At that moment, a maid entered the room and announced, "Madam, the Lord says the third prince has arrived at the residence to deliver the betrothal gifts. He requests your presence to receive him." "Got it," Miranda Nightshade replied, feeling as though she had been pardoned. She stood up and said to Olivia Carter, "We'll discuss the dowry later. The third prince has arrived, I'll go out to greet him first." With that, she hurriedly left, not giving Olivia Carter a chance to say another word. Chapter 3, Shameless Olivia Carter let out a cold laugh, then stood up and headed to the outer courtyard, walking even faster than Miranda Nightshade. Left behind, Miranda Nightshade called after her, "Where are you going?" "Since mother refuses to hand over the dowry left by my late mother, I naturally have to ask the third prince to seek justice for me," Olivia Carter replied without turning back, striding straight toward the outer courtyard. "You," Miranda Nightshade fumed. "Shameless. What kind of unmarried girl asks her future husband's family to intervene for her dowry? Come back here at once. What is shame? Can you eat it?" Olivia Carter turned, feigning innocence, her expression momentarily reverting to her former simple-mindedness. "Mother, fools don't understand shame. Even if I once did, after years of your torment, I've long since cast it aside." "Fine. You want the dowry and revenge? Dream on. You'll get nothing from the Prime Minister's residence." A venomous glint flashed in Miranda Nightshade's eyes. "Isn't he just a crippled prince? I, the dignified second wife of the Prime Minister, fear no one, especially not him." "Not necessarily," Olivia Carter said, a sweet smile playing on her lips. She quickened her pace, leaving the covered walkway and heading for the main reception hall. Inside, she saw Richard Lancaster and a eunuch, presumably Augustus Vane, enjoying tea. Without hesitation, she repeatedly pinched her arm, forcing tears to her eyes. Looking up, her gaze met Richard Lancaster's startled eyes. He held a teacup, clearly having witnessed her self-inflicted injury. Undeterred, Olivia Carter, tears streaming down her face, ran to Prime Minister Carter. "Father. Mother hit me," she choked out. An uncomfortable expression crossed Prime Minister Carter's face. In the past, when his simple daughter caused trouble, Miranda Nightshade's discipline was a minor matter. But today, with the third prince and eunuch Augustus Vane present, news reaching the Emperor of Miranda Nightshade mistreating the third prince's fiancée before the wedding would be disastrous. Would the Emperor think they disregarded his favor? "My dear, I was only jesting with you. I wouldn't hurt you," Chancellor Carter soothed, his tone unusually gentle for his dim-witted daughter. "It wasn't a joke." Olivia Carter shook her head resolutely, rolling up her sleeve to reveal the bruised flesh. Against her fair skin, the red and blue marks were stark. "Father, it hurts," she sobbed, presenting her injured arm. Olivia Carter caught Richard Lancaster stiffen, a flicker of suppressed laughter in his eyes, clearly amused by her performance. "Chancellor Carter, what is the meaning of this?" Eunuch Augustus Vane's face darkened immediately. "Isn't the third Miss Carter the soon-to-be wife of the third prince? How could she be treated like this in the Prime Minister's residence?" A long-time servant of the Emperor, Eunuch Augustus Vane was known for his shrewdness and tact. He always maintained diplomatic relations with all the princes, readily offering assistance when needed. This ensured a comfortable retirement, regardless of who ascended the throne. Even Richard Lancaster, a crippled prince with no real claim to the throne, received his assistance. Thus, the Emperor specifically chose eunuch Augustus Vane to deliver the betrothal gifts to the Prime Minister's residence, concerned that Richard Lancaster's disabilities might hinder him in handling any potential issues. "What's going on here?" Chancellor Carter's face flushed with awkwardness, unsure how to respond to Eunuch Augustus Vane. Miranda Nightshade's untimely arrival provided a convenient scapegoat. If Olivia made a mistake, couldn't you have addressed it calmly instead of resorting to this? Olivia Carter sneered inwardly. This was the so-called good father of hers. His words might sound like he was defending her, but in reality, they implied that Olivia Carter had done something wrong, using this as an excuse to brush the matter aside. Miranda Nightshade, however, missed the nuance. "My lord," she asked, bewildered, "when have I ever punished her?" While Miranda Nightshade might have been innocent in this specific instance, Chancellor Carter knew she and Evelyn Carter had a history of mistreating Olivia. He dismissed her words as a blatant attempt to avoid responsibility. Immediately, he felt his wife was truly unreasonable and frowned as he said, "Then where did the injury on Olivia's hand come from? This bruise clearly looks like it was caused by someone gripping her, not from an accidental bump." Miranda finally noticed the mark on Olivia's arm and realized the predicament. Before she could accuse Olivia of lying, Olivia began to weep, her head bowed. "Father," she sobbed, "I only asked Mother about the dowry my birth mother left me." She flew into a rage, saying even if she kept it, I, a fool, couldn't do anything about it. Olivia's tearful complaint was strategically delivered within earshot of Richard Lancaster and Eunuch Augustus Vane. Chancellor Carter finally sensed something amiss. He looked at Olivia in surprise. How could his seemingly naive daughter understand the significance of Amelia Roberts' substantial inheritance? The Carter family was prosperous throughout Jiangnan, but Amelia Roberts' dowry had equaled half the Prime Minister's estate. Chancellor Carter had greatly benefited from it. Giving up those estates, shops, and jewels along with his foolish daughter to Richard Lancaster felt like a painful loss. "Olivia, we'll discuss this later." Chancellor Carter coldly scolded Olivia Carter. Olivia blinked at Richard Lancaster, thinking to herself, "You may be physically disabled, but surely your mind isn't, right? I've made everything so clear, you can't possibly not help me now, can you?" Under Olivia Carter's pressuring gaze, Richard Lancaster coughed lightly and spoke to Chancellor Carter. "Chancellor Carter, it's better to clarify this matter now. Olivia Carter is my betrothed fiancée, her matters are my matters, and I cannot ignore them." This, while Chancellor Carter disdained the insignificant prince, Eunuch Augustus Vane's presence prevented him from being openly dismissive. He feared the eunuch would report his disrespect to the emperor, who might suspect Chancellor Carter's growing arrogance. "Richard Lancaster, don't spout nonsense." Chancellor Carter was wary, but the shallow Miranda Nightshade was not. She saw the crippled prince as less than one of Chancellor Carter's assistants. Olivia's performance had humiliated her. Fury ignited. "Your mother's been dead for years," she shrieked at Olivia. "There's no dowry. Everything you have comes from the Chancellor's residence. You ungrateful wretch." Both Chancellor Carter and Eunuch Augustus Vane's expressions changed. Olivia was to be the third prince's consort. Miranda Nightshade's insult, uttered before Eunuch Augustus Vane and Richard Lancaster, was a blatant disrespect to Richard Lancaster and the royal family. "You're lying." "I'm not ungrateful." Tears streamed down Olivia's face like shattered crystal. She looked at Miranda Nightshade with utter despair. "My mother left a letter. 10 chests of jewels, 50 acres of land, and 60 thriving businesses." 60 businesses. "There are only 30, Miranda blurted out, then realized her mistake. Seeing the cunning in Olivia's eyes, she understood the trap. Enraged, she lunged at Olivia. "You wretch! How dare you trick me?" For Miranda Nightshade, scolding and beating Olivia Carter had long become a habit. This time, in her fury, she completely forgot there were outsiders present until Chancellor Carter angrily roared, his face darkened, "Stop." It was only then that she remembered Richard Lancaster and Eunuch Augustus Vane were still there. So this is how the Chancellor's wife educates her illegitimate children. Even someone as tactful as Eunuch Augustus Vane could no longer hold back. He sneered coldly and said, truly an eye-opening experience. He hadn't expected that accompanying Richard Lancaster today to deliver the betrothal gifts would allow him to witness such a spectacle, of a stepmother seizing a dowry and oppressing an illegitimate daughter in such a disgraceful manner. If Chancellor Carter disregards the third prince's reputation and mine, and dares to berate the third prince's consort before us, I have nothing more to say. Upon returning to the palace, I will report everything to His Majesty. Let him discern right from wrong. With that, Eunuch Augustus Vane rose and, sweeping his sleeves, departed. Chancellor Carter paled, rushing forward to clutch Eunuch Augustus Vane's sleeve. Your Excellency, please stay. My wife spoke rashly and caused offense. I beg your forgiveness. He then turned and shouted at Miranda Nightshade, why haven't you come over to apologize to Eunuch Augustus Vane yet? Enough. Eunuch Augustus Vane raised a hand, halting Miranda Nightshade's awkward advance. His gaze softened as he looked at Olivia Carter. The insulted and frightened party is not me, but the third prince's consort. He stressed each word of third prince's consort, pointedly omitting not yet married. He deliberately elevated Olivia Carter's status to subdue Miranda Nightshade and Chancellor Carter, reminding them that even without the Emperor's favor, Richard Lancaster remained a prince, and Olivia Carter, as his wife, embodied his dignity. To insult Olivia Carter was no different than insulting Richard Lancaster. ### Chapter 4, Pairing People Together, Why haven't you apologized to Olivia and His Highness the Third Prince? Chancellor Carter snapped at Miranda Nightshade, wiping his brow. He understood Eunuch Augustus Vane's implication, disrespecting royalty could cost one their head, or their entire family. If reported, Chancellor Carter would lose his position and be imprisoned. Miranda Nightshade, oblivious to the deeper meaning, dared not argue against Chancellor Carter's fury. Gritting her teeth, she apologized to Richard Lancaster, then turned to Olivia Carter, murmuring insincerely, Olivia, I was wrong. Can you forgive me? Then where is the dowry my birth mother left for me? Olivia Carter asked firmly, her eyes unyielding. Still hesitant to respond, Miranda Nightshade remained silent. Seeing Eunuch Augustus Vane raise an eyebrow, Chancellor Carter immediately intervened, you'll have it. I will ensure your mother prepares everything properly. Husband. Miranda Nightshade protested. Silence. Chancellor Carter roared, disgusted by his wife's avarice. Couldn't she see Eunuch Augustus Vane was still present? Agreeing now was crucial, fulfilling it later was another matter. Surely, the eunuch wouldn't return to check. In that case, write me a formal agreement so you can't go back on your word, Olivia Carter said, her sharp eyes easily seeing through Chancellor Carter's petty schemes. Chancellor Carter initially planned to stall until Eunuch Augustus Vane left, but when he noticed the eunuch raising his eyebrows even higher, he immediately ordered someone to bring pen and ink. Write it. Write it immediately. Right then and there, the agreement was drafted and stamped with Chancellor Carter's personal seal. Olivia Carter took the agreement, her face lighting up with joy as she ran over to Eunuch Augustus Vane. Thank you, Eunuch Augustus Vane. Not at all, not at all. You are the third prince's consort, this is merely my duty, Eunuch Augustus Vane replied, smiling warmly at Olivia Carter, who looked as radiant as a blooming flower. He immediately took a liking to this future third prince's consort. Keep this agreement safe. If there's any trouble, you can ask His Highness the Third Prince for assistance. Understood, Olivia Carter replied cheerfully, casting a flirtatious glance at Richard Lancaster, nearly causing him to choke on his tea. Reflecting on how things might not have gone so smoothly today without Richard Lancaster's coincidental marriage proposal, Olivia Carter suddenly felt a growing fondness for him. The thought of marrying him no longer seemed like a loss at all. Chancellor, the gifts are delivered. His Highness and I must return to the palace, so we won't impose further, Eunuch Augustus Vane addressed Chancellor Carter. I've memorized the third princess consort's betrothal gifts. I hope you haven't forgotten. Otherwise, I'll accompany the third princess consort to His Majesty to seek justice. Rest assured, Chancellor Carter replied, though his heart ached at the loss of such a large fortune. He forced a calm expression, while Olivia Carter silently worried he might suffer a stroke from suppressing his frustration. Miranda Nightshade, seething, glared venomously at Olivia Carter since the betrothal list was written. Olivia Carter paid her no mind. After all, her goal had been achieved. Let her glare, it cost Olivia nothing. She escorted Richard Lancaster and eunuch Augustus Vane out of the Chancellor's residence, then tucked the signed agreement into her chest. Humming softly, she leisurely returned to her quarters. 2 carriages waited. As eunuch Augustus Vane prepared to board, he turned back, smiling at Richard Lancaster. Your Highness is fortunate. The third princess consort is not only beautiful but intelligent, unlike the foolish rumors. Indeed, that is true, Richard Lancaster replied, lowering his head in thought before smiling. I must thank you today, eunuch Augustus Vane, for stepping in. If it were left to me alone, I fear it would have been futile. A golden carp is no ordinary fish, eunuch Augustus Vane chuckled as he climbed into his carriage. Your Highness should not underestimate yourself. Since Olivia Carter reclaimed her property, Miranda Nightshade seethed, confining herself to her quarters, refusing food, and quarreling with Chancellor Carter to recover the dowry. Frustrated by her foolishness, he avoided her, visiting his new concubine instead. Learning this, Miranda Nightshade's rage consumed her appetite entirely. At that moment, Evelyn Carter arrived to stir up trouble again. Evelyn Carter had disrupted Olivia Carter's clinic several times, but Olivia Carter consistently ignored her and sent her away. Frustrated, Evelyn Carter went to Miranda Nightshade's clinic to cause a scene. Mother! Are you really going to let that wretched woman marry with such a massive dowry? This dowry list is several times larger than eldest sister's when she married the second prince. What about my dowry? If it's less than hers, I'll be humiliated. You'll be humiliated. I'd rather stay unmarried. Why are you so impatient? Miranda Nightshade scolded loudly. Do you think I'll let Olivia Carter force me to give up what I've already swallowed? She's dreaming. Your father's too proud to pressure her, so we'll make her give it up willingly. Mother, do you have a plan? Evelyn Carter's eyes lit up. A few days ago, I sent a letter inviting your cousin from the Zhao family. He should have arrived by now, Miranda Nightshade said confidently. Mordecai Vane. Evelyn Carter exclaimed joyfully. That's wonderful. Olivia Carter has always had a fondness for Mordecai Vane. But are you planning to catch them in the act to ruin her marriage? Ruining her marriage isn't enough. If she clings to that dowry, we won't gain anything, Miranda Nightshade sneered maliciously. Naturally, we'll offer Mordecai Vane a sum of money to lure Olivia Carter into eloping with him. Then, we'll kill her. Exactly, only the dead don't need money. Evelyn Carter burst into laughter. Madam, young Master Zhao has arrived, a maid announced from outside the curtain at that moment. Miranda Nightshade and Evelyn Carter exchanged sinister smiles, their eyes gleaming with the same malevolent intent. Annoyed by Evelyn Carter's constant harassment, Olivia Carter had shut her doors to visitors, spending her days in the back courtyard, concocting poisons and honing her combat skills. This body's physical aptitude wasn't bad, almost as good as her previous life's. Today, she was halfway through her training when she heard someone calling her name from atop the wall, "Cousin, cousin." Irritated, she looked up to see a handsome man dressed in a scholar's robe peeking over the wall at her. Mordecai Vane. Why would he climb over her courtyard wall for no reason? Olivia Carter frowned slightly, silently watching Mordecai Vane. Mordecai Vane wasn't even Olivia Carter's real cousin. He was a distant relative of Alara Finch, Carter Cam's mother and Olivia Carter's elder sister, consort to the second prince. Their blood ties were distant, surpassing the 5th degree of kinship. He'd studied at the Carter clan school, so the young ladies called him cousin out of courtesy. However, Mordecai Vane, greedy and determined to become the Chancellor's son-in-law, had courted Carter Cam and Evelyn Carter unsuccessfully. He then turned to the naive Olivia Carter, making her infatuated and even declare her desire to marry him. Chancellor Carter disapproved, believing Mordecai Vane would bring trouble. He wouldn't even let his foolish daughter marry him. Furious, Mordecai Vane returned to his hometown, but unexpectedly received a letter from Miranda Nightshade, stating that she was willing to help him marry Olivia Carter. Competing with the third prince was dangerous, but a connection to Chancellor Carter would ease his political entry. Olivia Carter's beauty, a face like a blossoming flower, a figure like a jade sculpture, was something Mordecai Vane had long coveted. Thus, he recklessly agreed to Miranda Nightshade's conditions. After all, Miranda Nightshade had assured him that Olivia Carter was a fool. If anything went wrong, he could simply shift all the blame onto her, and it would have nothing to do with him. However, upon meeting Olivia Carter today, he felt that something was strange about her. Not only was she practicing martial arts in the courtyard, but her gaze towards him was no longer gentle as before, instead, it was cold and icy. "Cousin," Mordecai Vane licked his lips awkwardly. "Is something wrong? Are you unhappy to see me?" "Happy, of course, I'm happy." Olivia Carter smiled innocently, inwardly disgusted. She knew from the former owner's memories how Mordecai Vane manipulated her and used her to steal. "Why are you here today, cousin?" Seeing Olivia Carter smile, Mordecai Vane immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He quickly climbed over the wall, jumped into the courtyard, and approached Olivia Carter with a grin. "Of course, I came to see you." "Cousin, please mind your manners." Olivia Carter suddenly took a step back. "Surely you've heard that I am now the betrothed fiancé of the third prince. To avoid any unnecessary rumors, I ask that you keep your distance." "Cousin, do you truly wish to marry that crippled third prince?" Mordecai Vane's face showed a pained expression. "Have you forgotten our vows of love? I thought that after you left, those things from the past had already become nothing but fleeting clouds." Olivia Carter lowered her gaze, replying softly, pretending to be heartbroken. "No, I haven't forgotten any of it." Seeing Olivia Carter's expression, Mordecai Vane thought she still had feelings for him and became instantly excited. "Cousin, after hearing about your arranged marriage, I rushed here without rest, day and night. I know you're unwilling, you still love me. Let's elope together." Finally, he got to the point. Olivia Carter sneered coldly in her heart, but on the surface, she feigned a look of shock. How could this be possible? Why not? Mordecai Vane grew more and more fervent. "We grew up together, childhood sweethearts, destined to be together. What right does the third prince have to steal my love? Come with me, Olivia." Even the way of addressing has changed. Olivia Carter looked at Mordecai Vane's heroic expression and suddenly asked, "Did my mother and father know you came here today?" "No, they didn't." Olivia Carter's sudden mention of Miranda Nightshade almost made Mordecai Vane stutter, but he quickly denied it. "I sneaked in to take you away." How could a mere scholar like himself possess the capability to infiltrate the heavily fortified Prime Minister's estate? It was utterly implausible. Clearly, someone had granted him access, and as for the identity of that individual, Olivia Carter's smile bloomed brilliantly like a peony in full blossom. "Take me away, cousin." Chapter 5, Punishing the Stepmother. Olivia Carter gathered a few necessities and discreetly trailed Mordecai Vane out of the residence through the rear gate. Throughout their journey, it appeared as though no one impeded their progress, even the sentinels at the rear gate were conspicuously absent. Olivia Carter couldn't suppress her inward astonishment. Miranda Nightshade had genuinely prepared the path for Mordecai Vane, even arranging for a carriage to be stationed directly at the back entrance. After ascending into the carriage, Mordecai Vane lost no time and promptly steered it directly out of the city. By the time they passed a city god temple, nightfall had already descended. Mordecai Vane addressed Olivia Carter, stating, "Olivia, let us tarry here for a moment. An acquaintance of mine pledged to deliver funds here for us. Without travel provisions, we shall not venture far." "All right." Olivia Carter obediently nodded, got off the carriage, and followed Mordecai Vane into the city god temple. Inside the temple, Mordecai Vane first lit a torch and then handed her a water bottle. "Drink some water to quench your thirst." Olivia Carter accepted the flask, and upon opening it, she detected an anomaly in the aroma. Feigning to imbibe a few sips, she then affected drowsiness, leaning against a pillar and simulating slumber. "Olivia, Olivia." Mordecai Vane shook Olivia Carter twice. Seeing no reaction from her, he immediately said, "Butler Darkwood, she's asleep." From behind the city god statue emerged a middle-aged man. It was Butler Darkwood from the Prime Minister's residence. Butler Darkwood approached Olivia Carter, inspected her a few times to confirm she was asleep, then smiled at Mordecai Vane and said, "Well done. So, where is the banknote Madam promised me?" Mordecai Vane asked with a fawning smile. Previously, Miranda Nightshade had vowed that as long as he could entice Olivia Carter into absconding with him, she would bestow upon him a substantial sum of money to facilitate their escape. Once he and Olivia Carter were wed, even if Prime Minister Carter was reluctant to acknowledge him, he would be compelled to accept him as a son-in-law, otherwise, it would become a source of ignominy for the Prime Minister's household. As for the third prince, a simple pretext of Olivia Carter being gravely ill, her pulchritude marred by unsightly scars, would suffice to dissolve the betrothal. At that juncture, presenting another individual with a scarred visage to the third prince would likely induce Richard Lancaster to personally implore the emperor to terminate the marriage, without the prime minister needing to utter a word. Contemplating how his protracted machinations were finally reaching fruition, and that he would inadvertently acquire a comely and readily manipulated wife like Olivia Carter, Mordecai Vane couldn't restrain his covert delight. "The madam has made a pledge to you, and she shall naturally uphold her word." Butler Darkwood smiled, extracting a stack of banknotes from his bosom and elevating them in his left hand. "These are all small denomination notes from Fu Keng Bank, each valued at 100 taels. Here are 2,000 taels, more than sufficient for your expenditures over the next few years." Mordecai Vane was overjoyed and reached out to take them, but unexpectedly, in Butler Darkwood's right hand, the one not holding the banknotes, a dagger appeared and plunged straight into Mordecai Vane's heart. "You," Mordecai Vane's eyes widened as he pointed at Butler Darkwood. "My apologies. These funds were entrusted to me by the madam as remuneration, with explicit instructions to ensure thorough disposal," Butler Darkwood uttered with a malevolent smirk. He withdrew the dagger from Mordecai Vane's heart and shoved him to the ground. Observing Mordecai Vane writhing on the floor, his body convulsing, the butler sneered, "Truly, I must express my gratitude for your luring the third young lady out. During Qingming and Zhongyuan next year, I shall ensure to burn copious offerings for you." Mordecai Vane twitched for a while before falling still, his wide-open eyes filled with disbelief and rage. Not bad looking, what a pity he was such a fool," Butler Darkwood muttered as he turned his gaze to the unconscious Olivia Carter. Under the torchlight, her face seemed to glow with an alluring, ethereal beauty. Butler Darkwood's eyes roamed over her, and a lecherous smile spread across his face. Killing her right away would be such a waste. Let me enjoy myself a little first. At the general's residence, I've been stuck with Miranda Nightshade, that aging hag. It's been suffocating me. As he spoke, he reached out to pull at Olivia Carter's clothing. However, just as his hand touched her collar, Olivia Carter's hand shot up and grabbed his wrist tightly. Olivia Carter's eyes snapped open, her penetrating gaze sending shivers down Butler Darkwood's spine. Her fingers pressed forcefully into a pressure point on his wrist before she deftly employed a special forces maneuver to contort both his arms behind his back. Then, with a forceful kick to the back of his knee, she compelled him to kneel to the ground with a thud, the dagger in his hand clattering to the floor. "Who would have thought that my stepmother, so demure and virtuous, would have such a sordid relationship with you, Butler Darkwood, Olivia Carter said with a cold smile, finally gaining leverage against Miranda Nightshade. Third young lady, what preposterous accusations are you uttering? Release me. Butler Darkwood couldn't fathom Olivia Carter possessing such strength, and regardless of his struggles, he couldn't liberate himself. Release you? How could I possibly contemplate such a course of action? Olivia Carter feigned solemnity as she declared, you have lain with my father's woman, so as his daughter, it is incumbent upon me to avenge him. Butler Darkwood didn't believe Olivia Carter truly intended to avenge Chancellor Carter. Furious, he cursed, you wretched woman, I underestimated you. What do you want from me? That's the real question, what do you want? Olivia Carter's voice turned soft and seductive, like the sweetest whisper of affection. Butler Darkwood, tell me, how do you want to die? Who's in there? Suddenly, a shout came from outside the Chenghuang Temple. Olivia Carter instantly recognized the night patrol, likely drawn by the temple's light, suspecting intruders. Snatching the fallen dagger, she smirked coldly. Apologies, Butler Darkwood, no time for choices. Here's the simplest option. With that, the dagger rose and fell, leaving a streak of bright red in its path. The sharp blade sliced across Butler Darkwood's throat, and blood sprayed forward. Olivia Carter shoved Butler Darkwood's corpse aside, ignoring Mordecai Vane's body, and bolted towards the temple's rear. Soldiers poured in. Just as discovery seemed imminent, a rope descended from the rafters, whisking her into the shadows above. As soon as Olivia Carter was lifted onto the beam, she found herself held tightly by a man dressed in black and wearing a mask. Startled, she dared not move, her heart pounding rapidly in her chest. Quick, report to Lord Quinton Ravenshaw. 2 bodies have been found here. 2 patrolling soldiers who had entered the city god temple were shocked upon discovering the bodies of Butler Darkwood and Mordecai Vane. They had no time to carefully search the temple, leaving one soldier behind to guard the scene while the other ran out to deliver the report. Olivia Carter mouthed, "What now?" to the masked man. He blinked, tightening his grip. She almost retaliated with a kick, but he deftly evaded the soldier's gaze and slipped out the temple's back door. The 2 ran until they neared the city gate, where they saw Quinton Ravenshaw leading a group of soldiers, all carrying torches, heading toward the city god temple from within the city. Looks like we won't be able to enter the city tonight, Olivia Carter said, frowning at the gate illuminated by the reddish-orange torchlight. Then let's rest here for a bit and wait until morning to enter. How about that? The masked man found a clean patch of grass, sat down, and patted the spot beside him, gesturing for Olivia Carter to join him. There's no other choice, Olivia Carter sighed, sitting down next to the masked man. Her mind wandered, wondering what schemes the peculiar mother and daughter pair would come up with tomorrow after her absence tonight. Why did you help me back there? Without his intervention, the guards would have caught her. Because you're interesting, the masked man said with a faint smile. I'm interesting. Olivia Carter raised an eyebrow slightly. They call you, Olivia Carter, the Prime Minister's 3rd daughter, a fool. I see cunning, a lethal blossom, the masked man shook his head. That precise strike, a killer's instinct. He suddenly leaned closer to Olivia Carter, his captivating eyes narrowing slightly. I'm genuinely curious, why did the 3rd young lady of the Carter family change so drastically after falling into the water? Were you pretending to be foolish all along? Maybe I hit my head when I fell into Moon Lake and gained clarity, Olivia Carter replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. And you? Why were you on the beam in the city god temple? Don't tell me you were sleepwalking. I've been following you. Who are you, and why are you following us? Olivia Carter's expression turned slightly cold. Curiosity. As for who I am, he chuckled. Guess. A correct guess earns a grand prize. I'm not particularly interested in who you are, Olivia Carter replied coldly, letting out a huff. Just don't interfere with my affairs, and we'll be fine. The masked man, who had appeared so mysteriously and possessed such extraordinary skills, made her instinctively wary. Interfere? Are you afraid I'll meddle in your good deeds? The man smirked lightly. Could it be that you're worried I'll ruin your engagement to the third prince? If you want to ruin it, go ahead. I couldn't care less, Olivia Carter said dismissively, waving her hand. Oh. So, you're not fond of the third prince because he's crippled and deaf? The man's tone grew colder as he said this, making Olivia slightly puzzled. Crippled, deaf, or a soaring dragon, irrelevant. We're destined to be strangers. Why? Think I'll be caged in his little princely residence? Olivia Carter laughed. Her past life's dream, exploring mountains and rivers, savoring delicacies, remained. The world's vast. I go where I please. No decree, no prince, can hold me. I'll leave him behind. Leave him. The man's posture visibly stiffened. Divorce him. Divorce? The man froze even more. That third prince is truly unlucky to have met someone like you. Keeping me by his side, that's the real misfortune, Olivia Carter laughed heartily. You already said I'm a calamity for men. Indeed, terrifying. The man looked up at her, and their gazes met as they both laughed. Olivia Carter suddenly felt that this masked man suited her temperament well, lacking the rigid traditionalism of people from this era. They chatted happily throughout the night. As dawn approached, Olivia Carter glanced toward the city gates and saw farmers carrying fresh vegetables into the city. It's already the third quarter of the tiger hour. I must go now, Olivia Carter said, turning her head, only to find that the man had vanished. She paused for a moment, then smiled. How rude, leaving without saying goodbye. She stood up, brushed the grass off her clothes, and blended into the early morning crowd heading to the market. Just as she passed through the city gates, a carriage approached from the side and stopped right in front of her. A limping figure stepped down from it, looking surprised as he addressed her, Miss Carter, what a coincidence. Indeed, quite the coincidence. Where are you headed, Your Highness? Olivia Carter stopped in her tracks and greeted Richard Lancaster. ### Chapter 6, Escape and Return. Last night, I drank a bit too much at a friend's house outside the city. Now I'm on my way back to the residence. And you? Richard Lancaster smiled warmly. If not for his crippled leg, he would truly embody the elegance and charm of a noble gentleman. Olivia Carter felt a pang of regret in her heart but replied outwardly, I'm also heading back to the residence. Then take my carriage. It's still early, and the streets aren't entirely safe for a lady, Richard Lancaster offered kindly. All right, I suppose, Olivia Carter reluctantly agreed, though she appreciated that Richard Lancaster didn't pry into where she had been. She found him to be a considerate person, with his only flaw being his injured leg. Olivia Carter got into Richard Lancaster's carriage. The two shared the same ride, yet neither spoke a word throughout the journey. The atmosphere inside the carriage gradually became stifling and awkward. They reached the Chancellor's residence with difficulty. Olivia Carter briefly thanked Richard Lancaster, practically fleeing the oppressive carriage, worse than ambushing in the cemetery in her past life. Reaching the back gate, she saw Chancellor Carter and Miranda Nightshade waiting, grim-faced. Where were you last night? Chancellor Carter questioned her immediately upon seeing her. Nowhere, I just went for a walk, Olivia Carter replied with a nonchalant expression. Do you know Quentin Ravenshaw came to our house last night? Chancellor Carter's face darkened. Butler Darkwood and Mordecai Vane are dead. What does their death have to do with me? Olivia Carter raised an eyebrow. Olivia Carter, the gatekeeper saw you fleeing with Mordecai Vane. Defiance. I sent Darkwood to retrieve you, worried about our disgrace. But you killed him, and Vane to cover it up. Miranda Nightshade's trembling finger neared Olivia Carter's face, her voice anguished, her heart bleeding hatred. Olivia Carter chuckled softly and turned to Chancellor Carter. "Father, do you truly believe that a frail girl like me could kill both of them?" This matter, Chancellor Carter looked at Olivia Carter and hesitated. Truthfully, Olivia Carter had been raised in the inner chambers her entire life. She wouldn't even dare to kill a chicken, let alone murder someone, especially two grown men. Any one of them could have easily crushed her with a single hand. The idea that Olivia Carter could have killed them seemed utterly implausible. "You must have had an accomplice," Miranda Nightshade shouted in fury. "An accomplice? Are you referring to me?" The back door suddenly swung open, and another person entered. Chancellor Carter and Miranda Nightshade turned to look, only to find that it was Richard Lancaster. "Your Highness, why are you here?" Chancellor Carter was startled, relieved Richard Lancaster hadn't heard everything. News of Olivia Carter and Mordecai Vane's escape would mean treason for the family. Last night, the third young lady of the Carter family stayed at my residence, chatting with me all night. I just escorted her back and discovered that one of her jade hairpins had fallen in my carriage. After speaking, Richard Lancaster stepped forward and gently fixed the jade hairpin into Olivia Carter's hair. Olivia Carter couldn't understand why Richard Lancaster was helping her lie. The jade hairpin wasn't even hers, but given the current situation, having Richard Lancaster as a witness was undoubtedly the best outcome. "You lie. Mordecai Vane told me he'd elope with Olivia Carter. And Darkwood's 2,000 silver taels are missing," Miranda Nightshade blurted, instantly regretting it as Chancellor Carter glared furiously. "Mother, if Mordecai Vane told you he wanted to elope with me, why didn't you stop him beforehand?" Olivia Carter coldly smiled at Miranda Nightshade. "And also, why did Butler Darkwood have 2,000 silver taels on him, and how did you know about it?" Miranda Nightshade flustered, speechless. Olivia Carter stepped closer. "Or did you let Mordecai Vane lure me into eloping, giving Darkwood silver to kill me? They failed, fled, and were killed by robbers." Pressed, Miranda Nightshade retreated, silent. "Enough. This ends here." Chancellor Carter, sharp-minded, saw truth in Olivia Carter's words, despite them being accusations. He hadn't expected Miranda Nightshade's incompetence, nearly committing the crime of deceiving the king. "End it?" Olivia Carter sneered at Chancellor Carter. "Father, you know better than I do what the crime is for inciting and conspiring to kidnap a royal consort, don't you?" Olivia. Chancellor Carter glanced at Richard Lancaster, who had been standing there clueless, and hurriedly pulled Olivia Carter aside. "This time, your mother was wrong. Please forgive her just this once, or else your father will face great trouble as well." "I can let it go," Olivia Carter smiled faintly, "but I have one condition." "Name it." Concerned about his future, Chancellor Carter, even though Richard Lancaster remained oblivious, had no choice but to find a way to silence Olivia Carter. "I want 20 shops in the southern part of the city," Olivia Carter's eyes gleamed. "How about that?" "Deal." Chancellor Carter, gritting his teeth, agreed as he looked at Olivia Carter, who was casually playing with a strand of her hair. "Then I'll ask Father to send over the deeds and ledgers for those 20 shops shortly." Unable to truly retaliate against Miranda Nightshade, Olivia Carter savored the victory of wresting 20 shops from Chancellor Carter. Turning to Richard Lancaster, she said, "Allow me to escort your highness out." "All right." Richard Lancaster maintained a calm expression as if he understood nothing and followed Olivia Carter out through the back door. "Master." Miranda Nightshade tearfully looked at Chancellor Carter. However, Chancellor Carter didn't even glance at her again. With a wave of his sleeve, he directly entered the study. Discovering that Olivia Carter was not only unharmed but had also gained 20 lucrative shops as dowry, Evelyn Carter was livid. These shops, originally promised to Evelyn by Miranda Nightshade as her own dowry, were now Olivia's. Evelyn stormed into Miranda Nightshade's room, creating such a scene with her wails and accusations that Miranda Nightshade fell ill by day's end. True to his word, Chancellor Carter delivered the deeds and records for the 20 shops by midday. Elated, Olivia Carter gifted Elara Moonstone a stunning jewelry set. Recalling Richard Lancaster's assistance that morning, she resolved to express her gratitude properly. She began by sending an invitation, requesting Richard Lancaster's presence for a meal the following day at Suey Goulot, a renowned restaurant in the capital. On the appointed day, disguised as a young man, she secured a private room on the restaurant's second floor and waited. Richard Lancaster arrived promptly. Beyond initial pleasantries, however, an uncomfortable silence settled over them, mirroring the strained atmosphere in the carriage the previous day. As the meal concluded, Olivia Carter, unable to bear the quiet any longer, was about to excuse herself when Richard Lancaster spoke, a smile touching his lips. "Since you've treated me to such a fine meal, I should reciprocate." "There's no need," Olivia Carter rushed to say, desperate to escape the awkwardness. "I simply wanted to thank you for your help yesterday." "Is my company tiresome?" Richard Lancaster asked, a flicker of sadness in his eyes. "No, of course not." Seeing the hurt in Richard Lancaster's expression, Olivia Carter couldn't bring herself to leave. Ruthless as she was with her enemies, she couldn't be unkind to someone who had helped her. Moreover, Richard Lancaster had aided her 3 times already, and even their engagement, in the end, was a result of him being implicated because of her. "That's good to hear." Richard Lancaster's smile was as warm as a spring breeze. "We're about to be wed, and I haven't given you anything yet. Across the street is the Treasure Pavilion. Why don't you pick something you like, and I'll gift it to you?" "All right." How could Olivia Carter refuse? She immediately stood up and followed Richard Lancaster out of Suey Goulot to the Treasure Pavilion. As soon as they entered the Treasure Pavilion, a mocking voice rang out, "Oh, third brother, what a coincidence. Are you also here to pick out a birthday gift for father?" The speaker was the 6th Prince, Theodore Lancaster. Olivia Carter then recalled that the Emperor's birthday was approaching, and it seemed Theodore Lancaster had come to choose a birthday gift for the Emperor. "Oh, isn't this the 3rd miss of Chancellor Carter's household, the one who dragged her elder sister into a lake?" Theodore Lancaster sneered as he noticed Olivia Carter beside Richard Lancaster. "The two of you, a useless fool and a simpleton, are here to buy antiques? Do you even have the eye for it? Be careful not to get swindled, ha ha ha." Observing Theodore Lancaster's arrogant smirk, while Richard Lancaster remained oblivious to the insult, Olivia Carter's temper flared. Stepping forward to stand beside Richard Lancaster, she met Theodore Lancaster's gaze with a challenging glint. "Are you certain, 6th Prince, that your judgment is superior to mine? If my judgment is worse than yours, you renowned fool of the Eastern Victory Kingdom, I'll jump into the Moon Reflection Lake myself." Theodore Lancaster, enraged by Olivia Carter's defiance, retorted furiously. He wouldn't tolerate being underestimated by someone he considered a fool. "Very well." Olivia Carter clapped her hands and laughed. "Then how about we make a bet? Whoever loses must jump into the Moon Reflection Lake in the Imperial Garden during the Emperor's birthday celebration." "Deal." Theodore Lancaster laughed angrily, agreeing immediately. "What's the wager?" "I hear Master Phap Van from the Great National Temple is an expert in antiques. We'll go to the West Market now, each select an antique, and then have Master Phap Van authenticate them. How does that sound?" Olivia Carter proposed with a smile. "Fine. Let's go right now." Theodore Lancaster, impulsive by nature, was ready to leave the precious Treasure Pavilion immediately. "Wait." Richard Lancaster interjected to stop them. "What's the matter? Are you scared, third brother?" Theodore Lancaster mocked. "No, it's just that Olivia is representing me in this bet. If she loses, I'll take responsibility for fulfilling the wager," Richard Lancaster said, looking at Olivia Carter with a gentle smile. Olivia Carter was momentarily stunned before Theodore Lancaster sneered, "All right then, I didn't know third brother was such a gallant protector. If you're so eager to jump into the moon reflection lake, I'll gladly let you do it." Chapter 7, standing up for him. The West Market in the Eastern Victory Kingdom's capital was much like the Panjiayuan market in 21st century Beijing. Stalls overflowing with antiques and curios, both genuine and counterfeit, lined the streets. A discerning eye was essential to avoid being cheated. Upon reaching the West Market, Theodore Lancaster immediately began rummaging through the stalls. Olivia Carter, however, remained unhurried. Approaching Richard Lancaster, she murmured, "Aren't you worried I'll lose?" Jumping into the moon reflection lake during the Emperor's birthday celebration was no trivial matter, especially for princes like Richard Lancaster and Theodore Lancaster. Those unaware of the situation could easily mistake it as a sign of dissatisfaction with the Emperor. "It's all right. I can handle losing," Richard Lancaster replied with a calm smile, seemingly oblivious to the gravity of the situation. "Don't worry about me. I'm a good swimmer, I won't drown." Olivia Carter scratched her nose, irritated. She hadn't taken it seriously before, but now, losing wasn't an option. Clapping Richard Lancaster on the shoulder, she headed towards the antique and second-hand stalls. While she was still searching, Theodore Lancaster had already selected several items, deliberating over his final choice. "Is this the 9 Monkeys Presenting Longevity painting by Master by Sean from the Southern and Northern Dynasties?" Olivia Carter's eyes lit up as she spotted an ancient painting while browsing. "You have a discerning eye, miss," the stall owner said with a bright smile. "May I examine it?" "Be careful and hold it securely, miss. Don't smudge or damage it. This painting has considerable age and is very delicate." Olivia Carter carefully took the painting. 9 monkeys, each clutching a large peach, their expressions fawning and obsequious, filled the canvas. "This painting belonged to a wealthy Jiangnan merchant," the stall owner explained. "After he died, his 4 sons, unable to manage their inheritance, squandered everything and sold this painting. I acquired it by chance." "How much for this 9 Monkeys Presenting Longevity painting?" Olivia Carter asked with a smile. If this painting was an original, she was certain this would secure her victory. 100,000 taels of silver, the stall owner replied with a grin, holding up all 10 fingers. "Miss, don't think it's too expensive. An original by Master by Sean is a treasure that's nearly impossible to come by." "That's quite steep," Olivia Carter frowned slightly, feeling a bit troubled. 100,000 taels equaled the annual profit of 20 of her shops. "Miss, for an original by Sean, 100,000 taels is a fair price. If you find it excessive, I can only offer my apologies," the stall owner said, his smile unwavering as he stroked his beard. Before Olivia Carter could relax her furrowed brow, 2 hands suddenly reached out and snatched the 9 Monkeys Presenting Longevity painting. The stall owner immediately looked distressed. "Young master, please be careful not to tear this old man's painting. If it tears, I'll compensate you." Theodore Lancaster held the painting, then glanced at Olivia Carter. "Miss Carter, if you can't afford it, don't bother looking. I'll buy this painting." "Hold on." Olivia Carter exclaimed anxiously. "I was looking at it first." "But can you afford it?" Theodore Lancaster sneered. "Wanting it is useless, buying it is what matters. Don't expect my third brother to bail you out. After he defended you in the Imperial garden and offended the Empress, he lost half a year's salary. He's probably eating gruel every day now." Olivia Carter gritted her teeth. The Empress's pettiness was astounding. Richard Lancaster had merely offered her a cloak and suggested she change, yet she forced a marriage and continued to torment him. Life amongst the royals was clearly a minefield for him. "I don't need His Highness the Third Prince to help. I can pay the 100,000 taels myself," Olivia Carter said coldly. She could not let Theodore Lancaster win. Too late. Little 4, hand over the money. Theodore Lancaster ordered, and a young servant beside him immediately presented a banknote for 100,000 taels to the stall owner. The stall owner, now beaming with joy, didn't spare Olivia Carter another glance. I will not lose to you. Olivia Carter flicked her sleeve and continued searching through the stalls along the street. Theodore Lancaster, confident with the 9 monkeys offering longevity painting, decided to shadow Olivia Carter. Whenever she showed interest in something, he bought it first. By the end, Olivia Carter's hands were empty, while Theodore Lancaster's bags overflowed. Well, Miss Carter, do you still want to pick something? Theodore Lancaster mocked, confident in his wealth and carefree spending. Humph, no matter how many things you snatch from me, it doesn't matter. I already bought something earlier, Olivia Carter retorted with a cold smile. Fine, let's go to Master FA1 and see who wins. Theodore Lancaster smirked. He was convinced nothing of real value could be found in the West Market. Anything truly valuable would be in the treasure pavilion. The painting was a fluke, and he didn't believe Olivia Carter could top it. He sneered at Richard Lancaster, third brother. It seems on the day of the grand celebration, you'll definitely have to jump into the moon reflection lake. Don't worry, I already told you, I'm an excellent swimmer, Richard Lancaster reassured Olivia Carter, noticing her irritated expression. It's not over yet, Olivia Carter gritted her teeth. You're truly one who won't shed tears until you see the coffin, Theodore Lancaster shook his head smugly. The group proceeded to the Great General Nation Temple. Coincidentally, there were no grand ceremonies requiring Master Fa1's presence that day, so he received them in the guest hall at the back of the temple. Theodore Lancaster explained their wager and presented the 9 monkeys offering longevity painting. Master Fa1 accepted it, glanced at it, then smiled at Olivia Carter. What have you brought, young lady? This jade cup, Olivia Carter replied with a serene smile, taking out a grayish-green jade cup from her sleeve and handing it to Master Fa1, her expression calm and composed. Humph, just a broken cup, and you think you can win against me? Theodore Lancaster sneered. Master Fa1 held the jade cup, his eyes immediately lighting up. After examining it closely for a moment, he smiled and said, the young lady is the winner. What? Theodore Lancaster's eyes widened in shock. Master, are you sure you've looked carefully? This is the renowned 9 monkeys offering longevity painting by Master Baishan. Your Highness, you jest. While this is the 9 monkeys offering longevity, it's not by Master Baishan, Master Fa1 chuckled. Baishan's brushstrokes are bold, depicting monkey fur with vigor. This painting's fur is too soft, a later imitation. Judging by its age, it's from a previous dynasty. You dared to deceive me. Theodore Lancaster glared furiously at Olivia Carter. Your Highness, even if this 9 monkeys offering longevity painting were authentic, you would still lose, Master Fa1 shook his head. Why? Theodore Lancaster asked incredulously, his face filled with confusion. Young man, this jade cup is made of 2 yen jade and originates from the Shang dynasty, Master Fa1 explained. Theodore Lancaster stood frozen in shock. The Shang dynasty? Indeed, when King Zhou built the wine pool and the meat forest, as well as the deer terrace pavilion, he once crafted 7 jade cups and a jade flask for Daji, calling them the 7 stars. This jade cup, 2 nam, is one of them. Unfortunately, only one remains. If the entire set were complete, its value would be immeasurable. Master Fap Van sighed deeply. So, you chose this cup and caused a scene to force me into competing with a fake painting. Theodore Lancaster flushed. Remembering something, he ordered his attendant to bring all the items he'd taken from Olivia Carter to Master Fa1. The result? 9 out of 10 were fakes, and the few genuine pieces held little to no significant collectible value. You wretched woman, how dare you deceive me? Thinking about how he had been tricked out of tens of thousands of silver taels today, Theodore Lancaster was fuming with rage. I refuse to accept this. Not satisfied? If you're not, we can always take this matter to the Emperor for judgment. Olivia Carter sneered. By the way, Sixth Prince, you might want to explain to His Majesty how you've been squandering such vast sums of money, tens of thousands of silver taels at a time. I'm genuinely curious about how you've managed to amass such wealth. Theodore Lancaster's face turned pale. Olivia Carter had struck a nerve. He dared not appear before the Emperor to confess that he had spent tens of thousands of taels on a pile of fakes. Most of this money had come from bribes. Our meeting at Benoyet Lake, I hope your highness doesn't forget. On that day, I'll be waiting at the lakeside pavilion with a toast in hand, Olivia Carter said with a faint smile. Don't get cocky. Unable to outmaneuver Olivia Carter, Theodore Lancaster shifted his focus to Richard Lancaster. Third brother, do you dare to place another bet with me? I don't gamble, but if my fiancé wishes to wager with you, I won't object, Richard Lancaster replied with a smile, glancing at Olivia Carter. I didn't know third brother had become so weak as to rely on a woman for support, Theodore Lancaster mocked. Unlike you, Sixth Prince, my third brother isn't so lost in indulgence that he's forgotten his purpose. Naturally, you wouldn't understand such things, Olivia Carter retorted with a cold smile. What's the matter? Is the Sixth Prince afraid of losing to me again? Fine. I'll bet with you. Theodore Lancaster declared, glaring at Olivia Carter but pointing at Richard Lancaster. I wager my title as prince against third brothers. Whoever loses will voluntarily request to be removed from the royal lineage and demoted to a commoner. Deal. Richard Lancaster agreed without waiting for Olivia Carter's response. Olivia Carter smirked coldly. The Sixth Prince's bold wager is truly admirable. I just hope you don't regret it later. This time, I absolutely won't lose to you again. Theodore Lancaster was determined to reclaim his dignity from Olivia Carter and Richard Lancaster. So, what's the bet this time? Olivia Carter asked icily. Jade stones. Theodore Lancaster sneered. Tien Not Pavilion has just received a shipment of raw jade stones from West Myanmar. Tomorrow, we'll go there and see who has the sharper eye. 3 rounds will decide the winner. Agreed. Olivia Carter clapped her hands in approval. Just don't lose too miserably, Sixth Prince. Otherwise, if you end up stripped of your title and can't even enter the Imperial Garden to jump into Benoyet Lake, I'll lose an entertaining spectacle. Don't get ahead of yourself. Chapter 8, The Gemstone Gamble. The Tian Pavilion in Dongshin Kingdom, known as the number 1 pavilion under heaven, lacks nothing, wine, beauty, talent, luxury, whatever you can think of, Tian Pavilion can provide. Most of its patrons are wealthy aristocrats or royal family members. Inside Tian Pavilion, there's 9 cards, dice, cockfighting, dog racing, and a black market arena. Gemstone gambling has become popular. 1 cut to poverty, 1 cut to riches, 1 cut to rags, is its slogan. Merchants travel from West Myanmar with raw jade, hoping for wealthy buyers at Tian Pavilion. Many try their luck, hoping to strike it rich. Theodore Lancaster arrived early at a private room on Tian Pavilion's 2nd floor. Losing to Olivia Carter yesterday fueled his fury and regret over the reckless bet. Losing meant losing wealth and reputation. News of the wager leaked, overflowing Tian Pavilion with onlookers. Except for the busy crown prince, all other princes and even officials on holiday were present. It wasn't just the princes, the buzz about Richard Lancaster's representative, Olivia Carter, the Prime Minister's foolish third daughter, added to the scandal. If Theodore were to lose to someone reputed as a fool in front of everyone, it would be a monumental humiliation. To prevent any mishaps, Theodore Lancaster had specially invited several gemstone experts to assist him, determined to claim the title of prince from Richard Lancaster. Olivia Carter and Richard Lancaster arrived a bit later. Olivia, still in her scholar's garb, was taken aback by the massive crowd packed inside and outside Tianyi Pavilion. Are your citizens always this eager to witness royal family squabbles? More witnesses mean more credibility, don't you think? Richard Lancaster smiled. As soon as the crowd saw them, they parted, creating a path. Stepping into Tianyi Pavilion's grand hall, the two saw 3 long rosewood tables, each laden with raw jade stones of varying sizes, awaiting Richard Lancaster and Olivia Carter's selections. Theodore Lancaster had already engaged gemstone experts to pre-select 3 rough stones based on their exterior colors. Today, with assistants at his side, he felt considerably more confident. The moment Olivia Carter entered, he announced, "Lady Olivia Carter, the 3rd daughter of the Carter family, has finally graced us with her presence. I assumed you and your 3rd brother were too apprehensive to appear. Tell me, Lady Carter, if you haven't even wed yet and have already caused your brother to forfeit his prince title, wouldn't that be the ultimate jest?" As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd around them collectively gasped. No one expected Richard Lancaster and Theodore Lancaster to wager the prince title. "6th brother, isn't this going a bit too far?" 2nd Prince Raphael Lancaster frowned as he spoke. "What's the big deal? 3rd brother isn't even afraid of losing, so why would it be inappropriate?" Theodore Lancaster laughed loudly. "3rd brother, you still have time to regret this decision." Olivia Carter glanced at Richard Lancaster, who turned to her with a reassuring smile and said, "Go ahead and take the bet with him. It'll be fine." At this moment, all eyes turned to Olivia Carter, waiting to see how this naturally foolish 3rd daughter would compete against the 6th prince. Although Olivia Carter wore a scholar's robe, her striking beauty clearly revealed her gender. She smiled faintly, approached the 3 long tables, closed her eyes, and ran her hands over the rough stones, slowly feeling each one. She even tapped them lightly with her fingers. "Does Lady Carter even possess the knowledge to choose?" someone in the crowd questioned skeptically. This gemstone wager relied on 3 factors: keen eyesight, courage, and luck, with eyesight being paramount. But Olivia Carter closed her eyes and felt the stones, like a blind person navigating a river. She even knocked on them. Did she believe they were watermelons, that the sound would reveal their ripeness? Could raw stones containing precious jade truly produce different sounds from ordinary rocks? "Lady Carter, you're feeling the stones with your eyes closed, do you expect the valuable ones to announce themselves?" Theodore Lancaster taunted. Yesterday, Olivia Carter had demonstrated her skill in appraising antiques, which initially worried Theodore that she might also possess exceptional eyesight for gemstone wagering. But now, observing her actions, she appeared utterly clueless. "You're absolutely right, they do tell me." Olivia Carter opened her eyes, smiled at Theodore Lancaster, and selected 3 rough stones. "These 3 are the ones." Unbeknownst to Theodore Lancaster, in her past life, although Olivia Carter came from a special forces background, her grandfather was an expert in antique appraisal. Growing up under his tutelage, observing and learning, she had acquired several techniques for selecting gemstones. Touching, listening, observing, were the 3 steps her grandfather always followed when choosing jade stones. High-quality stones often had a smooth texture, emitted a clear and rounded sound, and felt cooler to the touch compared to lower-quality stones. "3rd brother, are you sure you want to let her choose these 3 stones?" Theodore Lancaster looked at the 3 raw stones that Olivia Carter seemed to pick at random and asked Richard Lancaster with a hint of sympathy. Richard Lancaster simply smiled and nodded, unconcerned about the potential repercussions for his prince title. This implicit trust from Richard Lancaster genuinely surprised Olivia Carter. She hadn't expected this 3rd prince, who wouldn't go west if she told him east, to trust her to this degree. Though he was a man of few words, it wasn't necessarily a drawback. If he spoke excessively, she would find it irritating, like the 6th prince before her, grinning like a boisterous drake. "3rd brother, are you really not going to reconsider?" Second Prince Raphael Lancaster couldn't help but advise. Unseal the 3 raw stones, Richard Lancaster simply said. All right. Theodore Lancaster clapped his hands and loudly ordered, someone, bring the 3 stones chosen by Miss Carter and this prince for unsealing immediately. While waiting for the stones to be unsealed, Olivia Carter and Richard Lancaster ascended to Theodore Lancaster's luxurious private box. Seated on the second-floor balcony, they enjoyed refreshments while observing the 6 raw stones being unsealed below. Soon, all 6 stones were unsealed. Witnessing the results, everyone gasped in awe. All 6 stones, in terms of color, transparency, and quality, were exceptional, making it difficult to declare a victor. Ultimately, it was a tie. It seems today ends in a draw. Olivia Carter raised her glass toward Theodore Lancaster, 6th Prince. Today both you and the 3rd Prince retain your positions as princes. But don't forget about the meeting at Renping Moon Lake during the Emperor's birthday celebration next month. Theodore Lancaster's face immediately darkened at her reminder. He slammed the table and stood up abruptly. No. Today, I must have a decisive outcome with you. 6th Prince, do you really want to escalate the matter to such an extent? Olivia Carter's expression turned cold. What? Are you afraid? Theodore Lancaster narrowed his eyes slightly as he spoke. Olivia Carter scoffed. Today's tie was already the optimal outcome. Whether Richard Lancaster or Theodore Lancaster won or lost, the one who would ultimately suffer the most would undoubtedly be Olivia Carter. Because of her gamble, if a prince were demoted to a commoner, her disregard for royal dignity would only exacerbate the emperor's displeasure with her. But if Theodore Lancaster insisted on forcing the issue, Olivia Carter wasn't necessarily afraid of the wrath of the true dragon on the golden throne. Then please, Your Highness Luke, choose first. All right, let's get this over with. Theodore Lancaster stood up and signaled with his eyes to the group of stone gambling experts he had brought along. Immediately, their gazes all focused on the largest rough stone among the 3 long tables. I choose this one. Theodore Lancaster confidently stepped forward and placed his hand on that rough stone. Olivia Carter let out a cold chuckle, stood up, descended the stairs, and approached the long table. She placed her hand on another slightly smaller rough stone. I choose this one. Someone. Theodore Lancaster called loudly, start cutting the stones. They remained in the grand hall, observing the 2 craftsmen meticulously cutting the stones. Theodore Lancaster's gaze was fixed on his chosen stone, his face paling as the cut revealed a dull gray interior riddled with impurities, the jade quality abysmal. In stark contrast, Olivia Carter's stone unveiled a vibrant emerald green, pure and flawless. Gasps echoed through the hall, Imperial green. Your Highness Luke, a bet is a bet. Olivia Carter coldly eyed Theodore Lancaster. She had intentionally tied with him in the first round, offering him a chance to withdraw, but he hadn't taken it. Before selecting the 3 rough stones, she had already noticed the unassuming, smaller stone. Based on her years of experience, she knew that the 3 stones Theodore Lancaster had chosen would not yield high-quality jade. Thus, she had picked 3 stones of similar appearance to his. One should always leave room for others, as paths may cross again in the future. However, Theodore Lancaster did not heed this wisdom, so she saw no need to hold back anymore. This, Theodore Lancaster stammered, pointing at the imperial green jade. How can this be possible? Now, Your Highness Luke, you may enter the palace to request a decree, voluntarily relinquishing your status to become a commoner. Olivia Carter smirked, her gaze cold as she looked at Theodore Lancaster's horrified face. No, this isn't valid. You tricked me. You couldn't possibly know about stones. You cheated. Theodore Lancaster shrieked, panicked. Losing his royal status was unthinkable, and the emperor's wrath would be inescapable. In front of so many witnesses, does Your Highness Six intend to play tricks? Don't forget, it was you who set the terms of this bet. Olivia Carter sneered, approaching Theodore Lancaster slowly. I gave you a chance with the tie, but you pushed it. You reap what you sow, Your Highness. You made this choice, now bear the consequences. No, I don't want to. I am the dignified sixth prince. Theodore Lancaster stammered in fear, retreating step by step until his back pressed against one of the Grand Hall's large pillars. The surrounding crowd found Theodore Lancaster's actions disgraceful, with many pointing at him in disapproval. Some of the other princes even displayed open contempt, clearly holding no respect for Theodore Lancaster. Olivia Carter's face was a mask of contempt as she prepared to force his concession. Suddenly, a voice boomed from the pavilion entrance, an imperial decree. Third Prince Richard Lancaster, come forth. Everyone knelt. Richard Lancaster limped down to receive the decree. The eunuch read, by the mandate of heaven, the Emperor decrees, Third Prince Richard Lancaster has shown no self-discipline, inciting Sixth Prince Theodore Lancaster to gamble. He misused his princely privilege, an act of utter foolishness. Third Prince Richard Lancaster is sentenced to 7 days of confinement and must transcribe the doctrine of the mean 100 times. So it is decreed, it was clearly Theodore Lancaster who proposed the wager, so why is Richard Lancaster being punished? ### Chapter 9, Double the Payback. After the eunuch's departure, Olivia Carter studied the princes' faces. Theodore Lancaster wouldn't dare report the wager to the emperor. Richard Lancaster, uninvolved in court politics, wouldn't have officials filing complaints either. The other princes were the likely instigators. Richard Lancaster, a cripple with no chance at the throne, was still being targeted. What did he possess that made them so wary? What made him a threat? Olivia Carter couldn't figure it out. Yet, every time she thought about how Richard Lancaster, already disabled and constantly humiliated by others, was still being relentlessly oppressed, her heart ached. Third brother, did you hear what father said? We're not allowed to use our princely titles for wagers, so this bet doesn't count. Theodore Lancaster burst into laughter as soon as the eunuch left, turning to Richard Lancaster with a mocking grin. Richard Lancaster, holding the decree, simply smiled faintly. Olivia Carter, however, felt a surge of anger. Stepping forward, she glared at Theodore Lancaster. I can forget today's wager, but don't forget our agreement at Moonlit Lake, Sixth Highness. I can make you keep your promise. I won't forget. Theodore Lancaster's face immediately darkened, his teeth gritting as he glared at Olivia Carter. But don't get too smug, Third Miss Carter. No one has ever gotten the better of me. The humiliation I suffered today, I will make sure to return it to you tenfold. I'll be waiting. Olivia Carter replied coolly, casting him a fleeting glance. Under the watchful eyes of everyone present, she took Richard Lancaster's hand and walked out with him. Everyone was shocked. In Dong Tang Kingdom, propriety was paramount. Unmarried men and women showing affection openly would face severe social censure. However, Richard Lancaster and Olivia Carter were a publicly engaged couple, leaving everyone momentarily uncertain how to react. Olivia Carter, bold as brass, clasped Richard Lancaster's hand as they strolled away from the gawking crowd. Theodore Lancaster's gaze, sharp as a hawk's, followed Olivia's retreating form like a persistent shadow. Only when she vanished from view did he release a cold huff and lead his posse away. Why didn't you go to the palace to explain to the emperor that this matter wasn't instigated by you? Olivia Carter asked as she sat in Richard Lancaster's carriage. Does it even matter? The decree's been stamped and sealed. Even if I flap my gums, my old man'll just offer a few measly words of comfort. He ain't gonna backpedal on his own word, Richard Lancaster responded with a thin smile. But this ain't doing your reputation any favors with the emperor. Ain't that a worry? Olivia Carter furrowed her brow, puzzled. Even though Richard Lancaster had no designs on the throne and steered clear of political squabbles, he still needed to look out for his own hide. If he didn't milk this situation for all its worth and snag some sympathy from the emperor, he might be in for a rough ride when the crown prince takes the reins, given the prince's prickly personality. "Is that what's got your knickers in a twist?" Richard Lancaster asked earnestly, peering into Olivia Carter's eyes. "If my father never gives a damn about me, if I never hold a lick of power, would you still hitch yourself to me? Level with me. If not, I can wiggle out of this engagement. Would you be willing to marry me?" Olivia Carter met his gaze with equal seriousness. "A mere concubine's daughter from the Prime Minister's residence, someone who can offer you neither benefit nor support." "I would." Richard Lancaster gently took Olivia Carter's hand and kissed the back of it lightly. Olivia Carter's cheeks flushed slightly. She suddenly felt the spot where Richard Lancaster's lips had touched grow warm, the heat spreading intensely, reaching deep into her heart. "I'm game too." She snatched her hand back as if scalded, hiding her flustered feelings. Stepping out of the carriage, she glanced back at Richard Lancaster. "If I wasn't, I could wriggle out of this engagement too." "All right. Remember what you've said today and never regret it," Richard Lancaster nodded, lowering the carriage curtain, cutting off their line of sight. Standing at the back entrance of the Prime Minister's residence, Olivia Carter watched Richard Lancaster's carriage fade into the dusty distance. His last words puzzled her. But deep down, she truly did want to marry him, not because she loved him, but because he was her ticket out of the Prime Minister's house. Only by ditching the Prime Minister's residence could she truly get her mitts on her hefty dowry. Then, she'd cut ties with Richard Lancaster and carve her own path, where no one could tell her what to do. Richard Lancaster holed up for 7 days, lost in thought. Olivia Carter also kept to her courtyard for 7 days, not setting foot outside. On the 7th day, something big went down that sent Evelyn Carter into a tizzy of delight. She'd been picked by the Empress to marry the Crown Prince, the date already set, becoming his secondary consort. After days of nail-biting, she'd finally bagged her prize. Evelyn Carter practically wanted to shout it from the rooftops that she was about to become the Crown Prince's secondary consort. All day long, she sashayed over to Olivia Carter's courtyard, flaunting her good fortune and acting high and mighty. At dinner, Evelyn Carter and Prime Minister Carter exchanged knowing glances. The Prime Minister, noticing their pointed stares at Miranda Nightshade, cleared his throat. "Olivia," he began, "I've been mulling it over. Your dowry's already a king's ransom, you don't need those 20 shops. Am I not your daughter?" Olivia Carter raised an eyebrow and asked. "How could you say such a thing? When my elder sister got hitched, her dowry was 128 chests of goodies, all paid for by the public purse, not to mention the land and shops. How come when it's my turn, the whole dowry's gotta come from my mother's inheritance, and you're even snatching back the 20 shops you promised me?" Olivia Carter said with a frosty smile. "Ain't you worried folks will say you're playin' favorites, accusing you and my stepmother of treatin' your second daughter like dirt? You ungrateful wretch, how dare you speak to your father like that?" Miranda Nightshade slammed her fist on the table, leaping to her feet. Jabbing a finger at Olivia Carter, she shrieked, "You think you can get away with this because you're cozying up to the third prince? And now you have the gall to accuse us of mistreating you." Miranda Nightshade was riding high on her daughter's upcoming marriage to the Crown Prince. Even though the main consort outranked the secondary consort, with the Crown Prince's clout, Evelyn Carter would undoubtedly eclipse Olivia Carter. So, she and Evelyn Carter shamelessly leaned on Prime Minister Carter to claw back the 20 shops originally earmarked for Olivia. "Mother, have you never mistreated me?" Olivia Carter smiled sweetly, her voice smooth as silk. "When I was 7, who doused me with ice water and made me stand out in the freezing wind for a whole hour? When I was 10, who scalded me with boiling water because they weren't happy with my service? The scar's still on my thigh. Want a peek, mother? When I was 12, simply because I secretly tried on my second sister's new clothes, who beat me with a wooden stick until my body was covered in bloody marks. Every word Olivia Carter uttered, though calm, sent shivers down their spines. Miranda Nightshade sputtered, speechless, while Prime Minister Carter stood dumbfounded. He'd always dismissed this daughter, born with a seemingly simple mind, but he'd never imagined the cruelty she'd endured. As Prime Minister, the top dog among officials, if word got out that his household was a mess and he abused his illegitimate daughter, his reputation would be shot. He immediately turned and glared angrily at Miranda Nightshade. "I entrusted the household management to you, and this is how you've handled it. Never mind that Olivia is a girl, if someone were to give me a son in the future, wouldn't you harm him to death as well?" "Husband, I didn't." Miranda Nightshade's face went white with panic. Snatching a bowl of hot soup from the table, she flung it at Olivia Carter, screaming, "You think I mistreated you? Well, here's some mistreatment for you." Fortunately, Olivia Carter dodged swiftly, and only her dress was splashed with a bit of soup. If the scorching hot soup had landed on her head, her delicate, flower-like beauty would have been completely ruined. "Mother, I had hoped to leave you with some dignity, but you forced my hand." Olivia Carter coldly glanced at Miranda Nightshade, then pulled a silk handkerchief from her sleeve and turned to Prime Minister Carter. "Father, half a month ago, I accidentally found this handkerchief in the courtyard. Please take a look." Prime Minister Carter, bewildered by Olivia Carter's abrupt presentation of the handkerchief, accepted it for inspection. Miranda Nightshade's face drained of color. Embroidered in the handkerchief's corner were two words, "Victor Darkwood." "Isn't this the name of Butler Darkwood?" Prime Minister Carter frowned. "Butler Darkwood has already passed away. Are you not afraid of bringing misfortune by giving me this handkerchief?" "Father, please carefully examine the embroidery," Olivia Carter smiled. "Then compare it to the items Mother has embroidered for you, and you will understand what I mean." Carter's face contorted as he hastily retrieved the handkerchief embroidered by Miranda Nightshade for comparison. The stitching was indeed identical. The connection between Miranda Nightshade and Butler Darkwood was now undeniable. "You've done a fine job," he exclaimed, harshly throwing the silk handkerchief at Miranda Nightshade's face. "No, my lord, I swear I had nothing to do with this. I've been set up." Miranda Nightshade's face was a mask of terror as she pointed at Olivia Carter. "It's her. She's found someone to copy my stitches and frame me. My lord, we've been hitched for over a decade. What's Victor Darkwood got that you ain't? You gotta believe me." Hashtag Chapter 10, Self-Deception. Chancellor Carter hesitated, unable to dismiss the sting of Miranda Nightshade's words. Butler Darkwood, a mere servant, the son of his wet nurse, how could he possibly measure up to him? The notion that his first wife had an affair with a servant, that he was somehow less than a butler, was utterly repulsive to him, a chancellor of the court. As this thought crossed his mind, Chancellor Carter's expression turned stern. He glared at Olivia Carter and shouted loudly, "Guards, the third young lady has shown disrespect to her parents, an act of grave rebellion. Bring out the family discipline rod and punish her with 20 strikes." This time, Olivia Carter was truly taken aback. She hadn't expected Chancellor Carter to be so deeply entrenched in his own self-deception. The truth was glaringly obvious, yet he refused to question it. What a foolish man. If father remains unconvinced, why not have Deepney undergo a blood test to confirm her parentage? Olivia Carter retorted icily. It seemed Miranda Nightshade wouldn't shed a tear until she saw the coffin. Olivia was determined to expose the whole sordid affair. Jasper Carter was Chancellor Carter's only son, born when he was nearly 30, and always treasured like a priceless jewel. If this only son turned out to be a bastard, the product of an affair between Miranda Nightshade and Butler Darkwood, wouldn't the affection he had showered upon him all these years become a cruel joke? Someone, gag the third miss and lock her in the woodshed. Do not allow her to be released. Chancellor Carter, his face pale, commanded sternly. Who would have thought that father is a coward wearing a green hat without daring to take it off? Truly pathetic. Olivia Carter exclaimed angrily, unable to believe Chancellor Carter was being so stubborn. Several strong maids stepped forward to tie Olivia Carter up, but just then, a servant rushed in to report, "Master, Quentin Ravenshaw and His Highness the Third Prince have arrived to visit." "Why are they coming at this hour?" Chancellor Carter frowned, casting a glance at Olivia Carter. Before he could react further, Quentin Ravenshaw, Master Ravenshaw, had already entered with several constables and Richard Lancaster in tow. Chancellor Carter. "Master Ravenshaw, why have you barged into my residence this late at night with people in tow?" Chancellor Carter asked with an unhappy expression, looking at Master Ravenshaw. "It concerns the recent murders of Butler Darkwood and a distant relative of your household." "We have a new development," Master Ravenshaw explained. "I trust Chancellor Carter will permit a search of Butler Darkwood's room." "Oh. What progress?" Chancellor Carter glanced at Olivia Carter again. "We suspect this case is very likely a crime of passion." "A crime of passion?" Chancellor Carter furrowed his brows. "Indeed." Master Ravenshaw produced a bib and displayed it to Chancellor Carter. This was found on Butler Darkwood, embroidered with the name Miranda. "We suspect Butler Darkwood and Mordecai Vane killed each other over this woman." "Does the name Miranda ring any bells, Chancellor?" Chancellor Carter's face turned a sickly green. He seemed to radiate an almost verdant hue, clearly reluctant to answer Master Ravenshaw's question. If he wasn't careful, news of Miranda Nightshade's betrayal would spread throughout the capital. "Miranda is my mother's given name," Olivia Carter quickly interjected. Master Ravenshaw's gaze darted awkwardly between Chancellor Carter and Miranda Nightshade. Chancellor Carter whirled around, glaring daggers at Miranda Nightshade, whose legs threatened to buckle beneath her. Evelyn Carter sat frozen at the dining table, utterly dumbfounded. She couldn't fathom how a scheme to extort 20 shops from Olivia Carter had imploded, exposing her mother's infidelity. If this scandal spread, how could she live with the shame of having such a mother? Would the Crown Prince still want her after this? Olivia Carter glanced at Richard Lancaster, who had remained silent since entering. She couldn't understand why he always appeared at the perfect moment to help her during her most difficult times, as if he was constantly watching over her. "Chancellor Carter. Chancellor Carter." Master Ravenshaw stammered, unsure of what to say. Chancellor Carter, looking utterly drained, waved him off. "I will have someone show you to Victor Darkwood's quarters." He no longer bothered with the title of butler. "And I expect discretion from Master Ravenshaw in this matter." "Understood," Master Ravenshaw replied promptly, following a servant to Butler Darkwood's room. All he wanted now was to disappear from Chancellor Carter's sight as quickly as possible. Having unearthed such a monumental scandal in the Imperial Chancellor's household, Master Ravenshaw felt a profound sense of unease. He could only hope Chancellor Carter would be merciful and not hold this against him. Richard Lancaster remained, slowly approaching Olivia Carter. He stood beside her like a steadfast pillar, his gaze tender. Chancellor Carter closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, then bellowed, "Fetch the young master." "My lord, what are you intending?" Miranda Nightshade, fiercely protective of Jasper Carter, rushed forward, clinging to Chancellor Carter's leg. "My lord, the fault lies with me. Punish me as you see fit, but spare the child." Chancellor Carter kicked her aside and coldly ordered, "Someone bring a bowl of clean water. I want to conduct a blood test to confirm parentage." "Father." Jasper Carter, just brought in, ran sweetly to embrace Chancellor Carter. The Chancellor's gaze softened momentarily, then turned glacial as he averted his face. The mere thought of his cherished son possibly belonging to another man made him want to strike the boy dead. Once the clean water was brought in, Chancellor Carter personally pricked his finger to let a drop of blood fall into the bowl, then said, "Someone, bring the young master here to do the same." "No, I don't want to bleed." "It hurts, father." Mother, save me, Jasper Carter cried and screamed in pain, refusing to cooperate no matter what. Chancellor Carter, enraged, strode up and slapped the boy across the face. Shut your mouth. Behave. Or else I'll lock you in the woodshed. Mother, mother. Jasper Carter, no longer struggling, cried incessantly for Miranda Nightshade. Miranda Nightshade's heart broke, but she dared not intervene, watching helplessly as Jasper Carter's finger was pricked, a drop of blood falling into the bowl. In truth, even she was uncertain of Jasper Carter's parentage. While pregnant with him, she had begun an affair with Butler Darkwood, yet Chancellor Carter also frequented her chambers. Now, she could only pray Jasper Carter was the Chancellor's son. Chancellor Carter stared intently at the 2 drops of blood in the bowl for a while before glancing expressionlessly at Jasper Carter. Then, he turned and walked toward Miranda Nightshade. Miranda Nightshade's heart pounded as if it would leap out of her chest. Husband, my lord. Ah! Chancellor Carter abruptly kicked Miranda Nightshade's abdomen, sending her screaming to the floor. He delivered 3 or 4 more kicks before speaking. We've been married over 10 years. Have I ever mistreated you? Despite Amelia Roberts and Alara Finch's equal standing, I never let them overshadow you. I haven't even treated their daughters as well as Evelyn. Why did you betray me? As he finished, he seemed ready to deliver another kick, but Evelyn Carter reacted quickly, rushing to shield Miranda Nightshade and crying out, Father, there must be some mistake. You have to trust Mother. Trust? How can I trust her? Go see for yourself, those 2 drops of blood don't mix at all. Chancellor Carter glared suspiciously at Evelyn Carter. For all I know, even you might not be my biological child. No, Father. How can that be? I look just like you. Evelyn Carter's eyes widened, shocked. If she weren't the Prime Minister's second daughter, not Chancellor Carter's child, the Crown Prince wouldn't want her, and she'd have no place in the Eastern Victory Kingdom. Mother, say something. I am truly Father's biological daughter, right? You've never done anything to betray Father, have you? Evelyn Carter frantically shook Miranda Nightshade. Just now, Chancellor Carter had kicked too hard, and Miranda Nightshade took a long moment to catch her breath. Tears streaming down her face, she looked at Chancellor Carter and said, My lord, Evelyn truly is your biological daughter. When I was pregnant with her, I absolutely did nothing to betray you. So, you're admitting that Jasper Carter is not my son? Admitting that you betrayed me to conceive Jasper Carter? Chancellor Carter coldly questioned. The truth was undeniable. Tearfully, she nodded. Guards, confine Jasper Carter and the madam to her quarters. Announce her illness and forbid visitors. Chancellor Carter closed his eyes, then addressed Miranda Nightshade. After our daughters' marriages, I will deal with you. Yes, sir. 2 robust maids helped the prostrate Miranda Nightshade to her feet and escorted her away. A servant dragged the dazed Jasper Carter after them. Chancellor Carter glared at the remaining servants, his voice icy. What happened here? If a word of this leaks, your families will be sold as border laborers. We understand, my lord. All the servants present knelt down and responded in unison. Get out of my sight. Chancellor Carter waved his sleeve, and all the servants hurriedly left. He then rushed toward the servants' quarters to silence Lord Chu. Miranda Nightshade was expendable, but not yet, not until Evelyn Carter married the Crown Prince. The court was divided between Crown Prince Frederick Lancaster and Second Prince Raphael Lancaster. Chancellor Carter had arranged his elder daughter's marriage to the second prince, and his second daughter was to marry the Crown Prince. Whichever prince ascended, his position would be secure. Therefore, under no circumstances could Miranda Nightshade's scandal ruin his meticulously crafted plans. Chancellor Carter had just left, leaving Evelyn Carter sitting dazed on the floor of the Grand Hall, while Olivia Carter and Richard Lancaster stood coldly observing her. The play has ended, allow me to escort your highness out. Olivia Carter smiled gently at Richard Lancaster. Indeed, a rather entertaining performance. Richard Lancaster, along with Olivia Carter, left Evelyn Carter sitting alone on the ground as they walked away. After a short distance, Olivia Carter lowered her voice. "Why is it that whenever I face trouble, Your Highness appears to assist me?" She could have handled these matters herself, but Richard Lancaster's intervention simplified things, leaving her grateful. "I simply stumbled upon Quentin Ravenshaw and, driven by curiosity, followed him." "You're overthinking this, Miss Carter." Richard Lancaster smiled, countering with a question, "But is this blood test result truly without issue?" "Why does Your Highness ask that?" Olivia Carter playfully blinked and replied. Richard Lancaster did not respond, his gaze fixed on Olivia Carter. When the bowl of clear water was brought in earlier, he had noticed her right middle finger subtly move, as if she had done something to the bowl. "I hadn't anticipated Your Highness's perceptiveness." "Indeed, I employed a slight trick with the water," Olivia Carter admitted, smiling. "Adding oil and alum allows even unrelated blood to mix. Conversely, with oil, even blood of the same lineage won't blend." "Then, whose child is Jasper Carter, really?" Richard Lancaster looked directly at Olivia Carter and asked bluntly. "Who knows? I couldn't care less whose child he is," she shrugged nonchalantly. "All I needed was this result, to make sure Miranda Nightshade loses Chancellor Carter's trust and gets expelled from the mansion. As for Jasper Carter, that child, often emboldened by Miranda Nightshade's favor and Chancellor Carter's indulgence, had previously made things difficult for her, mostly at Evelyn Carter's instigation. But a child already adept at bullying the weak and fearing the strong at such a young age requires a proper lesson. He must experience the descent from heaven to hell, learning proper behavior in his place. Chapter 11, Under Attack. A flicker of something unusual passed through Richard Lancaster's brows, but before Olivia Carter could catch it, his expression returned to normal, so quickly that it seemed like an illusion. "But in any case, I was able to help, wasn't I?" Richard Lancaster's eyes glimmered with a smile. Olivia Carter didn't quite understand the meaning behind that smile, but his words were true, so she nodded slightly. "My father's birthday celebration is in a few days. Accompany me to the palace banquet. You won't refuse, will you?" His tone was ostensibly a question, yet meeting Richard Lancaster's gaze made Olivia Carter's heart skip a beat. He truly had a way of setting terms, first mentioning his contribution, then making a request in return. Olivia Carter couldn't shake the feeling that she had fallen into his trap. Richard Lancaster said again, "After all, you are my future consort, so attending is only natural. Unless, of course, you regret choosing to marry me. But don't forget what I asked you, you said you were willing to marry me." Facing the slightly unusual gaze of Richard Lancaster, Olivia Carter's face flushed red. She raised her head high and replied, "Olivia Carter has always kept her word. Isn't it just entering the palace?" "Fine, let's go." Richard Lancaster seemed troubled. "But preparing a gift for the Emperor gives me a headache. Every year, it's the same thing, nothing new or exciting." He shook his head as he finished speaking. Olivia Carter chuckled. "If you want my help, just say it. No need to hesitate." It seemed Richard Lancaster had been waiting for this. A faint smile appeared on his face. "Then let's go." "Go where?" Olivia Carter asked, startled. Richard Lancaster gestured towards the carriage outside. "To my residence, naturally. Or do you intend to assist me from the Carter estate?" His eyes held a teasing glint, deepening Olivia Carter's blush. She boarded the carriage, silently fuming about him. Upon entering the prince's residence, Olivia Carter couldn't help but be amazed. Although Richard Lancaster was considered the least capable among the princes, his status still ensured he lived in luxury. Walking through the corridors and pavilions, Richard Lancaster led her to the study. "This is the quietest place in the prince's residence. No one will disturb you here. Feel free to sit, I'll have someone prepare tea for you. Noticing Richard Lancaster's evident fatigue, Olivia Carter quickly interjected, forget the tea. You should rest. However, she saw his expression subtly shift, his eyes flashing, his voice deepening slightly. Are you pitying me? Feeling sorry for me? Taken aback, Olivia Carter hadn't considered it deeply, but knew precisely what to say. Of course, I'm heartbroken for you. Supporting Richard Lancaster, whose expression had softened, she helped him sit, offering a reassuring look. You're a good man. You helped me, so I'll reciprocate. Without waiting for Richard Lancaster's response, Olivia Carter called for a servant. Unexpectedly, a nanny, not a maid, entered. Olivia Carter observed her from head to toe and couldn't help but admire her. Although Richard Lancaster wasn't a perfect prince and his status wasn't particularly high, the servants in his household carried themselves with remarkable spirit and poise. Greetings, Miss Carter, the nanny said before Olivia Carter could speak, bowing with a smile. Her eyes sparkled as she assessed Olivia Carter from head to toe. Just as Olivia Carter was about to say something, the nanny added, Is there anything you need, Miss Carter? Olivia Carter was momentarily speechless. She turned to Richard Lancaster, only to see him smile helplessly and shake his head, clearly unwilling to argue with the nanny. Olivia gave a slight nod in acknowledgement and said, Bring the tea that the third prince usually drinks. The third prince doesn't usually drink tea, the nanny replied with a smile, her answer straightforward. Olivia Carter, about to turn away, paused, reassessing the overly rule-abiding nanny. Initial admiration faded, replaced by a waning smile in response to the nanny's faintly mocking one. Then just bring whatever he usually drinks, Olivia Carter said stiffly. Even she could hear the tension in her voice. Miss Carter, His Highness doesn't usually drink anything, the nanny replied, still smiling but with a response that left Olivia Carter at a loss for words. Oh, Olivia Carter's competitive spirit suddenly flared up, and she grew even more intrigued by this nanny. Your Highness, the third prince, I didn't expect the servants in your residence to be so extraordinary. Olivia Carter circled the nanny twice, her tone laced with sarcasm. Richard Lancaster, seemingly helpless, offered a faint, bitter smile and a wave to Olivia Carter. Don't dwell on it. He then turned to the nanny. Brew a pot of the Tiguanyin tea the second prince sent a few days ago and bring it here. Olivia Carter initially assumed the nanny was simply being difficult. With Richard Lancaster's direct order, she expected compliance. Instead, the nanny's smile vanished. Bowing respectfully to Richard Lancaster, she uttered words that shattered Olivia Carter's composure. Your Highness, we noticed you haven't been drinking tea lately, so we distributed the Tiguanyin to the staff. Forgive us. Olivia Carter felt a surge of anger welling up in her chest, yet she saw Richard Lancaster laugh lightly, defusing the situation. Is that so? Then just bring a pot of plain water. The nanny acknowledged the order and turned to leave. Olivia Carter stepped forward, confronting Richard Lancaster, unable to contain her frustration. Being bullied by your brothers is one thing, but being pushed around by your own servants? You're a prince, yet you're spineless. She then abruptly sat in the chair opposite him. Richard Lancaster's face still held a faint smile. As he looked at Olivia Carter, who was indignant on his behalf, his gaze grew even brighter. Smile, can you really still smile? Once was enough for me, it's hard to imagine how you live in the manor. Olivia Carter scoffed coldly, her gaze at Richard Lancaster revealing a hint of pity. Richard Lancaster immediately withdrew his smile, turning his face away as his voice deepened, Don't look at me with those eyes. Olivia Carter realized Richard Lancaster possessed a fierce pride. Why, then, could he endure humiliation from his brothers, yet crumble under her gaze? Before she could ponder further, the nanny walked in carrying a cup of plain water, placed it down, and stood silently in place. Third prince, the nanny inquired, her tone now composed, the medicinal herbs in the backyard are ready. When should we harvest them? Olivia Carter couldn't understand why the nanny would bring this up at such a time. She only saw Richard Lancaster frown and ask, "Weren't these matters always decided by you before? Why are you asking me now?" The nanny lowered her gaze, her face calm. "This servant is old and fears saying or doing something inappropriate that might displease the master. After much thought, it seems better to consult the master on all matters from now on to avoid unknowingly causing offense." The corners of Olivia Carter's lips curled into a cold smile, so it turned out they were targeting her. Late at night, Richard Lancaster waved his hand, and the nanny immediately exited the room. Seeing Olivia Carter remain silent, Richard Lancaster looked at her and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Olivia Carter raised both hands, her expression conflicted. "I'm debating whether I should marry you or not." A hint of amusement glimmered in Richard Lancaster's eyes as he teased, "Your skills, I've already witnessed them. Her. She's no match for you." Olivia Carter understood that "her" referred to the nanny who had just left. Olivia Carter didn't want to prolong the discussion. Their connection was superficial, a matter of mutual benefit. "We should think about what kind of gift to prepare for the Emperor's birthday." Olivia Carter changed the subject, stood up, and began walking around, observing Richard Lancaster's study. There were indeed many books, mostly autobiographies of famous figures, strange tales, and legendary novels taking up most of the space. A few medical books were stacked in the corner of the shelf, covered in dust. Olivia Carter picked one up, dusted it off, and frowned in displeasure. "Are your servants just idling around? They don't even bother cleaning your study." Richard Lancaster simply smiled, his gaze following Olivia Carter's every move. Feeling uneasy under Richard Lancaster's focused stare, Olivia Carter finally couldn't take it anymore. "Third Prince, how am I supposed to think clearly with you here watching me?" A subtle, knowing smile appeared on Richard Lancaster's face as he deliberately asked, "I haven't made a sound or disturbed you in any way. Why can't you concentrate?" Exasperated, Olivia Carter suggested, "Why don't you attend to something else? I'll tell you if I have any ideas. Otherwise, this trip will be wasted." Richard Lancaster did not make things difficult for her. He nodded and stepped out of the study, even thoughtfully closing the door behind him. Olivia Carter sat behind the desk, pondering deeply. The Emperor, ruler of the nation, possessed everything: beauty, wealth, power, and territory. Offering any of these as a gift from his son would be shallow. Wealth and power couldn't surpass the Emperor's own, and territory, unless conquered, was too mundane. Instinctively, Olivia Carter didn't want Richard Lancaster to endure humiliation again at the Emperor's birthday banquet. Thus, she racked her brain for a gift that would be both unique and pleasing to the Emperor. Her gaze wandered and suddenly stopped on a decorative stone in the study. The Emperor had been in his lofty position for a long time. What he lacked were items with novelty. An idea flashed in Olivia Carter's mind. She had a plan and immediately stood up to leave the study to inform Richard Lancaster. But as soon as she stepped outside, she realized she had no idea where Richard Lancaster was. Left with no choice, she wandered around the area near the study, waiting for him. A small, elegant garden lay before the study. A stream flowed under an arched bridge, meandering along the embankment before vanishing behind high walls. Olivia Carter sat on a rock by the stream, idly swirling the water, scattering the fish in its crystalline depths. Finding this amusing, Olivia Carter tried to catch a small golden fish, its body entirely red except for a splash of white where its head met its body. She couldn't help but take 2 steps forward. Suddenly, the rock beneath her feet slipped, and she fell straight into the stream. A willow branch dipped low over the water. Thinking fast, Olivia Carter grabbed a fistful of leaves, hoping to steady herself. The branch snapped, and she lost her balance, plunging towards the water. "Your Highness, Lady Carter is here." Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Henry Cole, Richard Lancaster's servant, rushing over in alarm. Chapter 1, designs on the Crown Prince Olivia Carter, you wretch. How dare you try to seduce His Highness? You think your fox-like face gives you the right to act so wantonly? You're nothing but a fool. At a secluded pavilion by Moon Reflection Lake in the Imperial Gardens, Evelyn Carter cornered Olivia Carter, her eyes blazing with jealous fury. To Evelyn Carter, Olivia Carter's exquisite face was like a blade, heated red-hot with jealousy, piercing her heart. The memory of the Crown Prince's attentiveness towards Olivia Carter only fueled her hatred. No, I didn't, second sister. Olivia Carter, facing Evelyn Carter's increasingly menacing expression, was bewildered. She didn't understand what she'd done wrong, but fear kept her rooted to the spot, retreating step by step until she reached the edge of the pavilion. His Highness is a person of noble stature. How dare you, a fool, even dream of him? With that, Evelyn Carter glanced at the lake behind Olivia Carter, malice swirling in her eyes. She lunged forward, shoving the unsuspecting Olivia Carter into Moon Reflection Lake. Second sister, please. Cough, cough. I didn't. He said he would be kind to me, that he wanted to take off my clothes. Olivia Carter clung desperately to the edge of the pavilion, her voice filled with terror as she pleaded with Evelyn Carter. His Highness said he would be kind to you. Evelyn Carter stood over Olivia Carter, her voice dripping with disdain. You deserve nothing. Just die. Consumed by jealousy and rage, Evelyn Carter stomped on Olivia Carter's clinging fingers. The sound of Olivia Carter's cry of pain filled her with a perverse satisfaction. No, it hurts. Second sister, please. Lin Ni doesn't want to die. Olivia Carter thrashed and cried out, desperately trying to hold on, but Evelyn Carter remained impassive. With a final, brutal kick to the head, she sent Olivia Carter sinking beneath the surface. Olivia Carter's hands, outstretched in a final plea for life, finally lost their grip. She sank slowly before Evelyn Carter's eyes, disappearing beneath the swirling water until the surface was once again still. Ha ha ha. Evelyn Carter stared at the rippling water, a triumphant laugh escaping her lips. Olivia Carter, you deserved it. His Highness is mine. Who told you, a born fool, to have such a beautiful face? Her laughter died abruptly as the water where Olivia Carter had sunk began to churn, and Olivia Carter resurfaced. Not dead yet? Evelyn Carter gasped. Seeing Olivia Carter rise to the surface, a fresh wave of malice washed over her. She leaned down and shoved Olivia Carter's head back under the water, determined to drown her. Don't blame me. If I'm not cruel to you, I'm cruel to myself. Olivia Carter was just about to surface when suddenly someone pushed her head down, attempting to drown her. Olivia Carter instantly flew into a rage, reaching out underwater to grab the hands pressing on her head, forcefully pulling Evelyn Carter down with her. Caught off guard, Evelyn Carter fell into the water and immediately screamed, "You bitch, you dare pull me down. Help, help!" Olivia Carter, shaking her slightly dizzy head, surfaced and was immediately stunned. She stared at the artificial rocks on the bank and Evelyn Carter beside her, shrieking for help. She had clearly been driving a police car across a bridge, pursuing a criminal, when a shot tire caused the car to flip and plunge into the river. She remembered struggling out of the car, desperately swimming to the surface, only to lose consciousness from lack of oxygen. When she awoke, she was nearly drowned in a lake by this crazy woman in ancient clothing. Could it be a hallucination from oxygen deprivation? What's going on? Why did the two young ladies of the Chancellor Carter household fall into the water? The Empress, drawn by Evelyn Carter's cries, frowned at Olivia Carter and Evelyn Carter in the water. Quickly, pull them out. It was mid-April, the height of summer, peonies in full bloom. The Empress, in high spirits, had organized a peony appreciation gathering in the Imperial Garden, inviting royalty and their families. In truth, She intended to use this opportunity to select a few girls of good standing as concubines for the crown prince, solidifying his position in power. But Olivia Carter and Evelyn Carter falling into the water had completely ruined everything. How could she not be furious? "Tran Ni, are you alright?" Miranda Nightshade, the Chancellor Carter's wife, seeing her own daughter soaked to the bone being rescued, immediately and heartbrokenly draped a prepared cloak over Evelyn Carter. "How did you fall into the lake?" "Mother, it was Olivia Carter's fault. She pulled me into the lake." Evelyn Carter nestled in Miranda Nightshade's arms, feigning innocence and pointing at Olivia Carter, her tone accusatory. After all, Olivia Carter was a fool. No matter how she was falsely accused, she wouldn't know how to defend herself. Miranda Nightshade immediately glared at Olivia Carter, who was also drenched but stood alone and unattended, and angrily demanded, "Olivia Carter, did you pull your second sister into the lake?" The surrounding crowd looked at Olivia Carter with disdain. Everyone in the Eastern Tang Kingdom's capital knew that the third miss of the Chancellor Carter household, Olivia Carter, possessed breathtaking beauty, but was a born fool. Pulling her second sister into the lake wasn't beyond her. Olivia Carter stood gasping by the lake, sneering inwardly, "If your daughter hadn't tried to drown me, would I have pulled her in?" She had seen clearly from this body's memories how Miranda Nightshade and her daughter had bullied the original owner, and how Evelyn Carter had just pushed her into the lake. No, it wasn't like that. His Highness the Crown Prince said he liked Lin Ni, but second sister said Lin Ni was a fool, unworthy of His Highness's affection, and said she wanted to drown Lin Ni, pushed Lin Ni into the water. Lin Ni was scared, so she grabbed second sister's hand, and then second sister fell into the water too, to be with Lin Ni. Olivia Carter feigned a naive, foolish look as she glanced at everyone, shivering from the cold while pretending ignorance, asking, "Mother, what does drowning mean?" The question hung in the air, chilling everyone to the bone. A fool couldn't lie, yet Evelyn Carter was willing to commit such a cruel act simply because the Crown Prince showed kindness to Olivia Carter. And the Crown Prince, how could he be attracted to a fool with only beauty and no brains? Everyone couldn't help but look at the Empress, her face ashen. The Crown Prince, Frederick Lancaster, had been raised under her meticulous care. She had poured her heart and soul into ensuring his secure position as heir. The woman who entered the Crown Prince's residence had to be from a powerful family, intelligent, and discerning. How could she allow a fool from a branch family of the Chancellor Carter household to step into the Crown Prince's residence? If the court officials who supported the Crown Prince were to find out, wouldn't they think he was infatuated with beauty, neglecting his grand ambitions? "Your Highness, is there any truth to this?" "Mother, absolutely not. I was admiring the scenery by the lake when Miss Carter, chasing a butterfly, unexpectedly stumbled into my arms. Second Sister Carter happened to witness this, and I fear there's been a misunderstanding." Frederick Lancaster bowed his head in response, not even glancing at Olivia Carter, his face stern, a stark contrast to the flirtatious demeanor he had displayed earlier amidst the flowers with her. It was clear that Frederick Lancaster had been pursuing Olivia Carter, even promising to marry her and bring her to the Eastern Palace. But Evelyn Carter had caught them, her jealousy igniting, leading to this attempt to drown Olivia Carter. Now, Frederick Lancaster was washing his hands of the matter, feigning innocence. Olivia Carter sneered inwardly. Before she could retort, Evelyn Carter hastily pointed at her and said, "His Highness speaks the truth, Your Majesty. I saw Olivia Carter behaving indecently and scolded her. Not only did she refuse to listen, but she also dragged me into the lake." In an instant, everyone's gaze towards Olivia Carter held a hint of suspicion. Though it was hard to believe one person's word, both Frederick Lancaster and Evelyn Carter accused Olivia Carter of actively seducing the Crown Prince, making her words seem unreliable. It wasn't strange for a fool to pull someone into a lake, but how could she know how to seduce a man? "Your Highness, you said you liked Linger the most. You're going back on your word." Olivia Carter immediately put on a pitiful expression, tears welling in her eyes, stammering as she looked at Frederick Lancaster. You even hugged Linger, recited poems to Linger, like, "Oh, beautiful one, I cannot forget you. Not a day goes by without me longing for you like a madman. And also, in heaven, I wish to be two birds flying wing to wing, on earth, two branches intertwined." The Empress's face grew darker with each word, while Frederick Lancaster wished he could instantly silence Olivia Carter. The surrounding guests exchanged glances. Everyone knew Olivia Carter was nothing but a beautiful airhead. How could she understand such romantic poems? Since Olivia Carter had said so, it must be true. Oh, and also, Olivia Carter, not yet satisfied, pulled a silk handkerchief from her sleeve and held it up for everyone to see. Everyone was stunned. Embroidered in a corner were two small characters, Frederick Lancaster, the Crown Prince's courtesy name, bestowed upon him by the esteemed scholar Sue on his coming-of-age ceremony. "Your Highness, you even gave me this handkerchief, saying it was a token of love." Silence. The Empress angrily interrupted Olivia Carter. Now that even a love token had appeared, if Olivia Carter continued, Frederick Lancaster would be criticized for being immoral if he didn't marry her. But she absolutely would not let Olivia Carter enter the Eastern Palace. If the person Frederick Lancaster had his eye on today was Evelyn Carter, it would have been better, but it was Olivia Carter, making her so angry she didn't know what to do. Olivia Carter, although the second daughter and a fool, was still Chancellor Carter's daughter. If she entered the Eastern Palace, the position of secondary consort would be inevitable. The regulations of the Eastern Palace allowed for one primary consort and two secondary consorts. How could the Empress let a natural fool like Olivia Carter take the secondary consort position? This position naturally had to be used to attract more powerful officials. Before she could figure out what to do with Olivia Carter, she heard Third Prince Richard Lancaster, who had been standing by the side, sigh as he looked at the drenched and shivering Olivia Carter. He took the cloak that the palace maid had just brought, limped over, and gently draped it over Olivia Carter. Early April, the beginning of summer, the lake water was still a bit chilly. Olivia Carter was drenched, and having knelt on the ground for a long time, she was starting to feel cold.